Chapter 790. List was already busy preparing for a new war. After the news of the Eagle Kingdom's long-sought light green gemstone dragon was leaked, all the countries thought that the light green gemstone dragon had escaped the soul brand of the first-generation Dragon Knight and became a wild evil dragon. Perhaps many countries were secretly sending people to search for light green gemstone dragons. But for the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, it was a great opportunity to attack the Eagle Kingdom. With one less dragon, they should spit out a large piece of land. Many countries coveted this piece of land. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire and List had no interest in land for the time being. All they wanted was to monopolize the sea. It just so happened that the Kingdom of Eagle was too busy to take care of itself. Of course, such a good opportunity could not be missed. The entire Grand Duchy of Sapphire, the Knight, was preparing for war. This time, I can no longer care about my identity and only let my followers fight. List, who regretted not capturing more great nobles last time, secretly swore in his heart, "I'll capture as many as I can. As long as it's a count or even a marquis, I'll capture them all. If I capture them, I'll have to exchange them with elves, magic potions, and Chi's secret skills." Marquis Nuteo had helped him earn a big elf. Other marquises and earls might not be as rich as Marquis Nuteo. Big elves were hard to come by, but little elves were never too many. Then there was the black nightshade worm and thorny thorn worm. The value of the auxiliary medicine was several times that of the magic potion. Of course, he already had sprite worms. If he could get the potion seeds, it would naturally be good. He also needed the light leaf tawu sprite worms and the rock garlic sprite worms. Currently, he had potions but no sprites. There are also talents, shipbuilders, and navigators. Capture as many as you can. When attacking the port, I should have surrounded them myself and not let a single talent escape. If I could capture a few Sky Knights, it would be good too. I have too few Sky Knights under my command. Once the Sky Knight was captured, it would be difficult for others to convince him to surrender, but it would not be difficult for him to do so. After all, he was the Dragon Knight who was going to found a new country. However, the Sky Knight was used to the wealth of the continent and might not be willing to go to the sea to suffer. Just as List was happily planning how many benefits he would reap from this naval battle, a voice suddenly rang out. Chi made big news on Black Horse Island. She brought the Thunder Dragon Turtle to Black Horse Island, climbed the land from the beach at the mouth of the sea canal, and climbed to the open space near Thorn Castle. Then she led Chris, Kenley, and the other great magicians to study the Lightning Dragon Turtle. Kenley was a great sorcerer of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. However, she had won Chi's approval not long after she arrived, because she had a good attitude and was dedicated to studying the truth. She also had a solid foundation and rich knowledge, which made her qualified to be Chi's assistant. The turtle shell with a diameter of 100 meters was like a small hill. Everyone who saw it exclaimed in horror. Even Marquis Oxtail, who was about to head to Blue Dragon Island for a meeting, rode his precious mount, Black Centipede, Black Albatross, to Thorn Castle to take a look at the Thunder Dragon Turtle. "Is this another sub-dragon?" "Father, according to the official name of the World of Warcraft Encyclopedia that is being compiled, it should not be called a sub-dragon, but a super dragon. This is a Thunder attribute super dragon, the Lightning Dragon Turtle." List introduced. "Have you tamed it?" Lee William exclaimed. Chi tamed it. She can communicate with the Lightning Dragon Turtle through the vibration of water. She just needs a suitable mobile mount on the sea. The back of the Lightning Dragon Turtle is wide, and I am planning to build a villa on it so that Chi and I can sometimes move on the turtle shell to work. List outlined his idea. Now that the Lightning Dragon Turtle was in his hands, besides research, of course, he had to make the best use of it. Lee William seemed to swallow his saliva. A mobile villa on the sea. That's good. Actually, it's not that good. The Lightning Dragon Turtle is a sea monster after all. It can't be controlled flexibly, far less than my flame. If Chi didn't insist on keeping it, I would have killed it long ago and studied its shell. Besides, such a big turtle should be very nutritious. Hee hee. Lee William laughed. You can always find these great dragons and World of Warcraft. Knight's glory favors me. After all, I am the son of glory. I can already imagine how huge the Flame family will be in the future. Flames will burn above the sea, and you will become part of the legend of the legendary continent. Not enough. I need to ride a few more dragons. The ox-tailed Marquis had a meal in the Thorn Castle. After the meal, the Marquis immediately left on the pitch-black albatross. Ever since he got this super magical beast mount, he would ride the pitch-black albatross wherever he went, including to Blue Dragon Island, where it was said that he would ride the pitch-black albatross as well. Liszt just shook his head at the Marquis' ostentatious behavior. He did not express his opinion. The weather in March was always accompanied by drizzling rain. Spring plowing had been completed, and the plantations of Black Horse Island were becoming more and more prosperous. On this small island, there were too many sprite wormstalks, including 3 great sprite wormstalks, thorns, phoenix perching parasol tree, and pea tree. Spring is coming, and the sprite worms should also be bred. I don't know if I can harvest another batch of sprite worms in spring and summer. It stands to reason that with Black Horse Island's scientific farming methods, sprite worms will not be less. Also, a perennial plant should have accumulated enough energy to breed. After inspecting the results of spring plowing, a number of officials were promoted. Liszt withdrew from territorial affairs and began to look forward to the progress of the smoke mission. Just today, a cheese breakthrough magic array for Paris was completed. This huge magic array had cost the territory more than 7,000 gold coins worth of magic materials. In order to promote the light magic swordsman, it can be said that it really cost a lot. The magic array was a bit like Stonehenge in England. The stone pillars were inlaid with a large number of magic materials, and the surface was also carved with special patterns and filled with magic materials. Paris, dressed in brand new leather armor, stood in the center of the magic array, nervously preparing. As a chi activated the magic array, the entire Stonehenge suddenly glowed with magic, and eventually, there was only one kind of light left, the white light from the light attribute magic. A moment later, Paris also began to run her chi according to the instructions. She had to coordinate with the magic array and adjust her chi operation according to the rhythm of the magic array. This process needed to be run in little by little. Liszt and a chi watched from the side. One used magic eyes and the other used magic pupils to carefully observe the connection between Paris and the magic array. The running-in process was not earth-shattering, and there was not even a sound except for the bright light. But in the vision of the two, there were countless secrets running. After an hour of running in, Paris finally reached synchronization with the magic array. At this time, a chi suddenly guided the magic array into the second stage and began to accelerate the speed of the light attribute magic particles. Feeling the changes in the magic array, Paris also made changes. The mid-level chi in her body gradually boiled, trying to break through. Originally, at this time, the outside light attribute magic would interrupt the boiling process, but this time was different. After the light attribute magic entered her body, it was quickly stimulated by the magic array and also began to upgrade. 1 synchronization. 5 minutes later, the light of the magic array suddenly trembled, and the lit symbols on the stone pillars went out one by one. Only Paris, standing in the center, was glowing with a dazzling light. Slowly, the light on her body began to converge, and only her eyes, ears, mouth, and nose were still shining. These lights eventually all converged. The moment the light went out, Paris's figure suddenly trembled and then disappeared into thin air. Chapter 791. The symbol of a sky knight, Zor. The high-level magic of a great mage, invisibility. At this moment, Paris directly broke through the shackles of the 2 cultivation systems and became a sky knight and a great mage, light swordsman. She was no longer an ordinary light swordsman, but a great light swordsman. Maintaining her invisible state, she flew back to her original place and knelt on one knee in front of Liszt. Paris suppressed her excitement and said, "Thank you for your cultivation, Your Highness. Paris is willing to be the spear in Your Highness's hand, and be at the forefront." She had completely integrated into the night system. Liszt's magic eyes were still running, carefully observing the signs of chi circulation in Paris's body, and casually replied, "You were able to successfully break through. A cheese and my efforts were not in vain." Paris immediately said to Acheron, "Thank you for your help, Sir Acheron Rhodes. Paris will always remember. Achi never liked to beat around the bush. You have just been promoted with a new cultivation system, and there is still a lot of information that I need you to cooperate with me to complete the records and research." Paris said solemnly, "It's a great honor." She was sincerely grateful. There was no one who didn't want to become stronger, even a woman. Paris was the same, especially when she saw List's youngest follower, Emily, training like a madman. She was deeply touched. Only by becoming stronger could she see the back of the Lord. Follow the Lord, create a new country, and become part of a legend. However, when List saw Paris being so respectful, he felt a little upset. Paris, who dared to kill nobles, even dared to break into the castle, and later blushed when she saw him, had disappeared. She was replaced by another qualified knight under the knight system. It was not that this change was bad, but it was always sad to have a vivid personality erased. List liked loyal followers even if they were like puppets, as long as they were loyal to him. However, for those who were familiar with him, he hoped that they could maintain their original personality. Unfortunately, under the wave of the knight system, it was difficult for people to maintain their former personality. That was why he had dragged Achi to play the piano and sing. He did not want Achi to become the next magician, the kind of madman who twisted himself for the sake of magic research and truth. Paris, you've just advanced. You can spend a few more days familiarizing yourself with the changes in your body. Don't be in a hurry to cooperate with Achi. Remember to come to Thornfort for dinner and dine with me. As you wish, Your Highness. Paris couldn't wait to familiarize herself with her current strength. List summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward: clue to fire demon swordsman. Paris's successful advancement meant that the quest was complete. This meant that the light mage swordsman class had a path to take, so the fire mage swordsman class was also theoretically possible to cultivate. The clues were easy to find. He directly asked the high mage, "Achi, do you have any insights into light magic swordsmen? Do you have any ideas on how to mass-produce light magic swordsmen? Or rather, fire magic swordsmen?" "I still have to analyze and compare, but Achi has a complete train of thought. I should be able to crack the cultivation methods of light magic swordsmen, fire magic swordsmen, and other dragon magic swordsmen after some time." "That's good, but don't be too anxious. You have too many magic research projects. Take your time." Okay. Even though Achi said so, she still entered her laboratory immediately. List simply returned to his study and began to ponder over what he had observed during Paris's advancement, trying to find out the secrets contained within. Perhaps because there were too many things he had observed, his mind was a bit messy. He couldn't come up with anything even after a long time. He was a bit irritated. He couldn't help but take a few deep breaths, adjust his mood, and summon the smoke mission with rapt attention. Mission: with Achi's constant care, the mangrove forest is growing more and more prosperous, and the ducklings and little firebirds are growing one batch at a time. The mangrove sprite, Nami, is in a good mood every day. Let her continue to do so. Reward: a mangrove sprite. Nami is also going to evolve. Looking at the smoke serpentines, List couldn't help but reinvigorate himself. Although Nami was not his contracted sprite, there was no emotional difference, and it used its own diligence to practice its value. This made it far more important in List's mind than other sprites. Since the smoke mission has been issued, let Achi take half an hour every day to play with Nami. Not only will Nami always be in a good mood, but it will also allow Achi to be free from the fetters of magic and relax his mind. List immediately made a decision to kill two birds with one stone. Then he laughed. Searching for the giant kelp forest in the sea, contracting the giant kelp sprite Parker, capturing the Marquis of Wildwave in exchange for the pea sprite Ike, exploring the Fire Mountain forest and discovering the Phoenix parasol sprite Ani, stimulating the thorn sprite Ella to evolve into a thorn sprite, and now caring for the mangrove sprite Nami to evolve into a mangrove sprite. The fifth sprite was about to be in his hands. It was worthy of celebration. Very soon, Another piece of news that was worthy of celebration was sent over by the exploration fleet using the magic platform. They discovered a large island 400 kilometers south of the first row of islands. It was estimated that the area of this large island would not be smaller than Coral Island. According to the scale conversion, Black Horse Island was about the area of an ordinary county, and Coral Island was about the area of an ordinary city. The area of an ordinary city was about 10,000 square kilometers. It was indeed a large island. The island is lush. There are dense mangroves even on the seaside, and a large number of seabirds can be seen circling. I am leading the expedition fleet to find a suitable place to land and prepare to explore the island. We will rest in place and wait for the flame to supply the fleet with supplies. After listening to the news transmitted by the magic platform, List immediately asked Lucy and Ruth to reply, "Tell Yevich that I will set off with the flame as soon as possible. In addition, tell him not to go deep into the island, but to explore the periphery. The top priority is to search the surrounding waters as much as possible. There must be more islands." With the war coming, List could no longer divide the night to take over the exploration mission. Moreover, the distance to explore the island was getting farther and farther, and it was difficult to quickly resupply. He and Achi could not waste time sailing on the sea all day to resupply the expedition fleet. The 3 islands, Dragon Turtle Island, and the first island were all undeveloped. Now there was another large island, and they were unable to explore it. Even if he went to the new island himself, it would be difficult to explore the island in a short period of time. Although the Dragon's Eye Trail was powerful, if the forest was too dense, it would be difficult to find the plants at the bottom, thus neglecting products such as World of Warcraft, potions, and sprites. When he was in the Burning Mountain for 5 or 6 days, if he hadn't seen the Parasol Spirit's worm stalk, he might not have been able to find the Flame Dragon bird. I hope that behind this island is a larger group of islands. Black Horse Island is 3,300 kilometers away from the first island, and the first island is 400 kilometers away from the new island, which is more than 3,700 kilometers away. It would take nearly a month for an ordinary sailboat to sail. Even if Achi sailed at high speed with the flame, it would take 7 or 8 hours to arrive. Chapter 792. It was a large island not much smaller than Coral Island, floating alone on the sea. There were no islands around List expected. There were not even sporadic small islands, at most some coral reefs. Of course, List was not disappointed with the island. At present, the expedition fleet only cruised a few times in the surrounding waters and did not explore further. There may be no islands within 100 kilometers, but there may be islands beyond 100 kilometers. The name of the island had not yet been named. He had the intention to name it Flame Island, meaning that it was the first small cluster of flames established in the Kingdom of Fire, but he felt that if there were no suitable islands around, this cluster of small flames would not become a joke, so he simply did not name it and called it the New Island. He and Achi arrived at the new island with the flame, and after a simple inspection of the new island and the surrounding waters, the two hurried back to the flame territory. The new island was here. Elves, potions, and World of Warcraft could not escape. There were a lot of daily affairs in the territory, so there was no extra time to spend on the new island, especially with the approaching war. List had a lot of preparations to make. Once the war started, the trade of the territory was bound to be affected. After the war, surf trade and the like had to be prepared now so as not to be inadequate. So, time passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the end of March. The Battle of the Sea initiated by the Sapphire Grand Duke had officially set a time. Orders of chivalry would gather at Iron Hoof Island on April 4th, rest for a day, and then begin to attack the fleets of the Kingdom of Eagle, as well as the major ports where the fleets were anchored. The fleet of the Flame Territory was quickly organized. The 3 orders of chivalry, Iron Hoof City, Black Horse Island, and Fresh Flowers began to board the ships for training. This battle at sea was different from the charge on land, which required night to fight on the ships. Boarding battles would become the main means. Marcus, who originally served as the Orders of Chivalry of Thorns, was transferred to the deputy commander of the Orders of Chivalry of Fresh Flowers to assist List in the training of the Orders of Chivalry. As for List himself, he had followed a chi to the Dodo Island. There was only one reason for coming to the Dodo Island this time. The light green gem dragon had awakened. With the telepathic bond, he knew the moment the emerald gem dragon woke up. When he arrived at the Dodo Island, the emerald dragon that had been asleep for half a year was struggling to walk on the shore of the Dodo Island. Even with List providing it with a magic potion to sustain its life, it still could not stop its energy loss. At this moment, he was so weak that he couldn't even fly. The flame was anchored on the beach. List gestured for a chi to wait on the ship while he walked towards the light green gemstone dragon alone. The light green gemstone dragon turned its head to look at List. There was a complicated look in the dragon's eyes. Even though the battle of the soul had erased the brand of the first-generation Dragon Knight, some memories could not be erased. It was still an adult dragon that had lived for more than 400 years. It had its own behavior and personality. Roar! When List approached, the light green gemstone dragon couldn't help but let out a soft cry. There was no hostility in this cry. After all, he had already ridden on the Dragon Fang platform and had become one with the light green gemstone dragon. This was the first time a dragon and a knight had met face to face. In an instant, many thoughts appeared in the minds of the man and the dragon. There was a vague rejection, but in the end, all the thoughts flashed through their minds. List took a deep breath. He jumped onto the back of the light green gemstone dragon and sat on the Dragon Fang platform. The light green gemstone dragon didn't resist. In an instant, the Dragon Knight resonance was completed. It entered the Dragon Knight mode. Its soul was completely integrated, and its thoughts were in sync. List could clearly feel the complicated inner world of the light green gemstone dragon. The light green gemstone dragon could also feel List's domineering heart. Strictly speaking, it was still List who was in charge of the spiritual world. The intelligence of a dragon was not inferior to that of a human. Its spiritual power was also strong enough. However, it was still a mount that was conquered by the knight in the battle of the soul. Light green gemstone dragon, our souls are one. I can feel your weakness, and I can understand your needs. No matter what happened in the past, you and I are one now. You will be raised by me, and we will explore this boundless world together. Roar. You want bone-burning wine? Sure. Roar. You want potions, jades, and World of Warcraft meat? Sure. Roar. You want an undisturbed dragon nest? Sure. Roar. You refuse to release your bloodline's power of infection because you are heavily injured? Sure. Roar. Don't worry, big guy. I can satisfy whatever you want. However, you must satisfy what I want. Remember, battle is what you need to do. Fight with me. Production, you are responsible for infecting the light green gemstone mines. Train, you and I train together. Break through the shackles of the Dragon Knight. Roar. The light green gemstone dragon roared excitedly. One man and one dragon reached an agreement. List quickly descended from the dragon tooth platform. Next, a large number of supplies were carried down from the flame, including a large number of World of Warcraft meat, a small number of potions and auxiliary potions, and a batch of bone-burning wine brewed with flowers. Bone-burning wine was a specialty of the royal family of the Eagle Kingdom. List could not get the recipe, but he could make do with other white spirits. As for jade, for the time being, he could not provide it because there were no jade mines in his territory. A small amount of jade reserves had to be supplied to the elves. There was a jade mine on the Coral Island, but the 5-year harvest period had not yet passed. The jade mine did not belong to List for the time being. Moreover, the output of the jade mine on the Coral Island was too small to meet the needs of the light green gemstone dragon. After the dragon-slaying war, List asked the Sapphire Grand Duke how the sapphire dragon produced gems. The result was that whether it was dragon blood, dragon scales, dragon breath, or even dragon dung, they could all be brewed over a period of time to form crystal mines, from which a small number of gems could be produced. However, in order to obtain a large number of gems, dragon blood could be used as a guide to sprinkle blood on the earth. Otherwise, jade must be used as a guide to let the gemstone dragon form a jade dragon breath, which would then be combined with the earth to form a gem mine. Coupled with the dragon magic that was constantly emitting from the dragon's body, it could continuously condense crystal mines, and the crystal mines could continuously condense gems. Therefore, it was not easy to cultivate a gemstone dragon. However, compared to the gems obtained, these costs were nothing. Moreover, the most important thing about dragons was their fighting strength. A dragon could protect a dragon-raising family for a long time. Just like a truck driver, he had to spend a lot of money to take care of the car, refueling, maintenance, insurance, and so on. However, a car could also support a family to eat and drink. Compared to raising elves, the cost of raising a dragon could be said to be huge, but the benefits were equally huge. Eat and recover as soon as possible. When the time comes, I will send you to the new island. You can live on the new island for a while. When I establish a kingdom, I will build you a satisfactory dragon nest. Chapter 793. The light green gemstone dragon's awakening made List feel relieved. For the time being, he would let the light green gemstone dragon live on Dodo Island until it could spread its wings and fly before leaving. But before leaving, List and the light green gemstone dragon discussed a serious matter. Did you have a name before? Roar. The light green gemstone dragon let out a sorrowful roar. It did have a name in the past, but after the death of the first generation dragon knight that accompanied it, its name also disappeared. No one dared to call it by that name again, and over time even the dragon itself almost forgot that it had a name. Seeing this, List touched the scales of the light green gemstone dragon. I have a fire dragon, Leo. You've seen him before. Roar. The light green gemstone dragon was quite unhappy with the young dragon that defeated it. It said that it would never coexist peacefully with the fire dragon. Of course, it would not kill each other when they met, but they could not live together. If it rode a fire dragon, it could not ride it. Of course, List did not have an opinion on this. He did not want to ride two dragons at the same time. Besides, the fire dragon was a fighting dragon, and the light green gemstone dragon was more of a production dragon. I will separate you from Leo. Your life will not be any different from in the Eagle Kingdom, but you still need a name. I'll call you Ethan. List thought of a green dragon in a game that had turned over a new leaf. Its name seemed to be Isendra. Since it was light green and not dark green, he would keep half of it and call it Ethan. He usually used divergent thinking to name things, or it could be called association. Just like how the little fire dragon Leo was called Leo, there was a game in which the male fire dragon was called Leo, and the female fire dragon was called Leo. Since the dragons in this world were not divided into male and female, the fire dragon would be called Leo. Roar. The light green gemstone dragon, or Ethan, was not very satisfied with its name, but it did not reject the name Ethan. It could understand List's thoughts when its mind was synchronized. A name was just a name. It had nothing to do with anything else. No matter how nice the name of the weak sounded, they were still weak. The strong were still respected even if they had a cheap name. Then, Ethan, take care of yourself. Roar. After bidding farewell to the Emerald Dragon Ethan, April 4th soon arrived. 2/3 of the orders of chivalry from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire had gathered at the port of Oxhoof City on Ironhoof Island. List did not participate in the orders of chivalry in the Flame Territory. Instead, he handed the command over to his father, the Oxtail Marquis. He and Ichi would be there to suppress the battlefield, ensuring that no Dragon Knight of the Eagle Kingdom would participate in this battle and attack the ordinary knight. However, the work of suppressing the battlefield was left to Ichi. List was ready to go down personally to warm up and capture the knight for ransom. So, father, uncle, feel free to attack as you please. I will focus on patrolling the war zone and capture any knight who resists. After wiping out the Eagle Kingdom's naval fleet, we will immediately set off for the coastal port cities and launch a destructive attack on the Eagle Kingdom's naval forces. Lee William and Miziro smiled. With List, the Dragon Knight, helping them, they could already imagine that this battle of the sea was like harvesting wheat. Soon after, Prince Anthony, who served as the commander-in-chief, also came to see List. After chatting, they checked the plan for the Battle of the Sea for the last time. On the morning of April 5th, the Sapphire Fleet filed out of the port of Oxhoof City. They set off towards the Azure Sea to prove that the Azure Sea was still the inland sea of the Sapphire people and not something that the people of the Eagle Kingdom could touch. The Flame followed the Sapphire Fleet at a moderate pace. There were no sailors on board, only a few maids responsible for cleaning and a few cooks carefully trained by Mrs. Abby. For the night, this was a war that they were prepared for, but for List it was just an outing. The Dragon Knight at the border of the Eagle Kingdom was too busy to support the Battle of the Sea. Just like the expansion orders every year, the Eagle Kingdom was always the passive party to be beaten. With great difficulty, they were ready to play big and sweep Sapphire in one fell swoop, but they encountered List. "Brother!" Achi's voice made List, who was admiring the blue sky and white clouds, slightly return to his senses. In fact, he was not looking at the sky in a daze, but thinking about the fifth move of the Fire Dragon Knight Dragon Battle Chi. Now that he was proficient in the Dragon Chop, Burning Heaven Sweep, Swallowing Sun Stab and Boiling Sea Twist, he could develop the next move. However, the next move was a myriad of ideas, and he had not yet figured out where to start. He turned to look at Achi. "What's wrong?" Achi handed over a notebook. After studying Paris's cultivation path as a light demon swordsman, Achi has summed up the basic cultivation method of a demon dragon swordsman. However, it is only an outline. The specific details will have to be personally trained by Brother to verify the content. On the cover of the notebook was written, "Demon Dragon Swordsman Cultivation System Outline." Flipping open the content, the graceful serpentines clearly introduced the cultivation clues. She had also drawn many illustrations, including drawings of human meridians and magical runes. After several years of magic study, Achi had become a master of drawing. She didn't need to rely on a ruler, and the drawings she drew were as clear as a photograph. Even after developing the super magic eye, she could draw 3D drawings according to the vision of the magic eye, which could be called a printer. Flipping through the Demon Dragon Swordsman Cultivation System outline, List carefully deliberated for a moment, then put the book into his spatial ring. "When the Battle of the Sea is over, I will select a group of qualified young trainee knight and refer to this book to train them as fire demon swordsmen." Achi gave the book to List, let him stroke her hair, and then continued to go to the cabin to do research. Now that the improvement of the magic platform technology had been handed over to Chris, the magic eye plan had been developed, and she had helped develop the fire demon swordsman cultivation system, she could finally put aside the complicated magic experiments and devote herself to switching attributes of elemental incarnation. List continued to lie in the rocking chair, looking at the white clouds in the sky, thinking about how to display the fifth move of the dragon battle technique. At the same time, he was constantly polishing the first four moves. He strived to turn the Fire Dragon Knight Dragon Battle technique into a true peerless divine technique, so that he could control the little fire dragon Leo and be invincible. Moreover, he had a vague clue in his heart. Perhaps by relying on his own ability to cultivate to the Dragon Knight stage, he would be able to take a peek at the cultivation path of the Dragon Knight. In particular, the study of the Flame Dragon Bird and the Lightning Dragon Tortoise made him realize that the fusion of the soul with high magic and even supreme magic was probably the cultivation method for the later stages of the Dragon Knight. The triangular theory of magic, matter, and spirit seemed to have to be taken into account in order to reach a higher peak. According to the legends, the Elven King was infinitely large and had turned into a forest, where even dragons lived. According to the legends, the Moon Empire had a magic array leading to the moon, and the devils overseas had a destroyed civilization called the Sun's Child. According to the legends, souls existed in the land of exile, and Curtis Truth created a ghost ship in an attempt to travel back and forth. Chapter 794. The Flame was also carrying a large bird, Loki the Chocobo. In the Battle of the Sea, List did not intend to ride the dragon and show off his prowess. That would be too high profile, and it would feel like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. So he simply brought Loki over, and prepared to ride Loki to capture Sky Knight. Loki was only a mid-level dragon beast, and its flying speed was average. However, it had a strong jumping ability, and could jump from one ship to another. It was especially suitable for capturing Sky Knights who tried to escape during boarding battles. The only thing to be careful of was not being shot to death by arrows. After all, Loki was only a slightly stronger dragon beast, and its defense was not strong. From the third day of departure, Sapphire's fleet encountered the Eagle Kingdom's fleet. There was no doubt that these scattered fleets, even if sailing in the name of trade, would still be captured and captured. From the fourth day onwards, they encountered more and more ships, and on the fifth day, they encountered even more fleets. List basically did not make a move in the first 5 days, and did not see many Sky Knights, so he did not bother to fight for credit with Sapphire's orders of chivalry. Until the sixth day, the fleet had arrived at the coastal waters of the Eagle Kingdom, and encountered more and more resistance. At this time, there were already many Sky Knights of the Eagle Kingdom on the ships. Seeing this, List happily rode Loki and strolled around. Seeing an arrogant knight, that is, a Sky Knight who was suppressing the Sapphire Knight, he rode Loki and rushed over, capture and throw him to the Flame Territories fleet. On the 6th, 7th, and 8th days, they all attacked the fleets in the coastal waters. List captured a total of 5 Sky Knights, but unfortunately, the strongest was only a Sacred Swordsman count. The Eagle Kingdom's fleets that went out to sea were rarely accompanied by powerful Sky Knights, especially the lords who rarely went out to sea. After all, the sea was still the Sapphire people's battlefield, and the great noble lords would not easily take risks. However, from the 9th day onwards, Sapphire's fleet arrived at the already explored first port of the Eagle Kingdom, the port of Gravel City. Shatterstone City was a new city. It had only been built about 10 years ago, but it was a standard port city. There were many docks around it. Basically, it was certain that the Eagle Kingdom had arranged to build this port city after receiving the shipbuilding technology provided by the Bull family. Also, Shatterstone City was built in a location that was intentionally away from the areas that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire liked to attack, such as Sardine Bay, the Yellow Mud Coast, the Roaring Estuary, and the Lush Corridor. He chose the location of the mouth of a scalding river. Enemy attack! Smoke rose into the air, and the bugle horn sounded. The knight and magician of Shattered Stone City did their best to resist, but the orders of chivalry sent by the Sapphire fleet flooded in and bombarded the port city. Charge! Attack! Crush the enemy! Countless charging chants intersected together, shaking the heavens and the earth. List did not aim at the city. He only told Achi, splash some water on the city to extinguish the smoke. Yes, brother. It was a piece of cake for a magic shooter to deal with such a small matter. A waterspout suddenly rushed towards Shattered Stone City, extinguishing the smoke that had not yet emitted much smoke. Not a single ash rose. Knight's glorious blessing. The Knight of Sapphire shouted, and their attacks became stronger. Everyone understood that this trip was not only protected by the Dragon Knight, but also by the magic shooter. This battle of the sea was destined to only have victory and gain, no failure. List glanced at Shattered Stone City, but did not participate in the attack. Instead, he focused his energy on the docks near the port. He did not care about his identity anymore. He personally led the Flame Dominion, the Oxtail Dominion, and the Orders of Chivalry of Red Crab Island to plunder the docks where the ships were being built. Especially the craftsmen who were building the ships. None of them were spared. They were all tied up and brought to the ships. After sweeping one dock, they went to the second one. The Orders of Chivalry stationed at the docks were already defeated when they saw Lee William riding on Superworld of Warcraft. They did not expect that the Dragon Knight would personally plunder the docks. A moment later, List had already looted the 10 docks around him. He even rushed over to the docks that were being looted by the Orders of Chivalry and forcefully asked for the craftsmen. All of these craftsmen who knew how to build ships were taken by List. He did not plan to leave any for the Sapphire Grand Duke. It was impossible to traverse the sea without craftsmen. By the time all the docks had fallen, Shattered Stone City had not been taken. This port city that was half city and half castle had an astonishing defense. A bunch of trash. Seeing this, List despised these ordinary orders of chivalry for wasting time. However, he did not have the intention to personally attack the city. After all, he still wanted to save some face. Unfortunately, He did not have any powerful followers under him. Emily had not matured, Paris had just broken through, Fox and Garcia were only ordinary Sky Knights, and Mary and the other vampires could not possibly attack the city. Achi, you should make a move. Give Boulder City a few water blades. Yes. The innocence and purity of the little siren had long been polluted by List. Apart from List, she did not have much sense of identity with other humans. She raised her hand and communicated with the magic net. Soon, a huge water blade was formed on the surface of the sea. With a light wave, this super magic named Chainsaw Super High Pressure Water Blade was blasted towards Shattered Stone City. Boom! One blade cut through a thick wall of Shattered Stone City. The 2-meter thick wall was as fragile as tofu in front of the super magic. After one slash, a chi began to form a second one. After 3 consecutive slashes, Shattered Stone City collapsed. However, the battlefield suddenly quieted down. The knight and magician in the castle were stunned. Even the orders of chivalry were stunned. They did not know what to say. Everyone fought back and forth in full swing, fighting to the point that their blood was boiling and they were having a great time. In the end, it suddenly ended. However, on the flame not far away, a chi just calmly asked, "Brother, is this okay?" "Yes." Looking at the destroyed, shattered stone city, List could not help but be speechless. Ordinary magicians were so weak that they could not even participate in the war. However, from the magic shooters, one could still see the shadow of the Moon Empire when magicians ruled the world. It had to be said. If the magic net had not shrunk, the knight would not have been able to compete with magic shooters even with the Dragon Knight. 2 or 3 super magic spells were needed to attack a city. It was simply overwhelming. In the era before the magic net shrunk, if magicians could really cast spells at will, the knight would not have been much of a problem. However, this era had abandoned magicians. The magic net had shrunk, and ordinary magicians were almost useless. More importantly, there had been no news of magic shooters advancing for many years. Even though Achi relied on the tears of the mermaid and the talent of the siren to advance, it still could not change the situation of the decline of magicians. Of course, List presided over the transformation of magicians into scholars, which was a good way out. I am a knight, so magicians should change their profession as soon as possible and focus on becoming scholars. Let the knight do the work of ruling the world. With his hands behind his back, List smiled as he watched the knight clean up the battlefield. The only magic shooter was still Achi. Chapter 795. Shatterstone City did not waste much time. The Dragon Knight and the magic shooter personally led the looting, which was too fast. Anthony divided some orders of chivalry to continue to attack inland along the Scalding River in an attempt to loot all the surrounding towns. The towns around Shatterstone City must be towns that provided shipbuilding services. List did not participate in the cleanup. He filled the family fleet with shipbuilding craftsmen and a small number of knight captives, then quickly sailed to the next port. According to intelligence, the Eagle Kingdom had built 3 large port cities by the sea, namely Shatterstone City, Seakeeper City, and Majestic Flying City. The shipyards were basically distributed around these 3 cities, but there were also many small port cities of various sizes used to anchor ships. On the first day, Shatterstone City was cleaned up. On the second day, they continued south to clean up the surrounding port cities. On the third day, Seakeeper City was cleaned up. On the fourth day, they continued south to clean up the surrounding port cities. On the 5th day, it was Majestic Flying City's turn to be cleaned up. For 5 days in a row, Sapphire's fleet, under the protection of List, fought all the way from the Scalding River to the Savage Plains. Further south, although it was within the sphere of influence of the Eagle Kingdom, most of the land was not inhabited by humans, and there were no ports along the coast. So, Father, what did we get from this battle at sea? List rode the Chocobo Loki and landed on the flagship of the Tulip family. The Oxtail Marquis poured 2 glasses of crescent wine and handed them to List and Messiro, saying, "Basically all the shipbuilding craftsmen were captured. More than 10,000 shipbuilders, most of them young and strong. No old shipbuilders were found. The Bull family did not show up, and all the shipyards were built in the name of Alonso. The shipbuilding industry of the Eagle Kingdom began with the Bull family. There was no doubt about this. Only the Bull family could bring shipbuilding technology to the Eagle Kingdom. Liszt had previously believed that any old boatman would most likely be a boatman of the Bull family. However, most of the shipbuilders here were young and strong, and they spoke wind language, not the slightest bit of serpentine, so there was no way to prove that they were involved with the Bull family. It seemed that the Bull family had disappeared. Liszt, why are you so persistent in searching for the remnants of the Bull family? Mesiro took a sip of wine and asked. As an ordinary Sky Knight, he was getting more and more high-spirited recently. In the previous wars to open up the territory, he was a very awkward existence. During the battles, he needed to rely on the few sword saint followers of his family, so his words were not tough at all. But now, all he needed to do was sit on the ship and drink wine, and his followers would fight for their lives without any orders. This was not the power brought by Angela, but by his nephew, Liszt. Liszt swirled the wine in his cup. It's not about being stubborn or not. I just want to see if Marquis Bull's grandson is really that talented. The grandson of the Bull Marquis, André Sapphire, became an Iron Knight at the age of 12 and forged mithril armor. His promotion to Sky Knight was as simple as drinking water. If he participated in the Dragon Knight Reserve plan, he would definitely be able to make a name for himself. According to the time, he was already 17 this year. No matter how much of a genius he is, he can't surpass you. Mesiro laughed. The Marquis of Oxdale also laughed. Liszt was an 18-year-old Dragon Knight. He was only 19 this year, and he was already preparing to build a country. No matter how talented that André was, how could he compare with Liszt? Moreover, the Bull family rebelled against their lord, and such a bad name was hard to wash away. The royal family of the Eagle Kingdom would probably not let such a person touch the dragon. Liszt also laughed. With the help of the smoke mission, the talent he showed was indeed invincible. Father, uncle, these shipwrights are very important. I hope to take their families with me, so I will need you to take care of them for a while. You can tell these shipwrights and their families to go to my territory and be given houses and land. After I build a country, they will all be free people. If you treat these serfs so well, I believe they will happily follow you overseas. Let the ships transporting the serfs take good care of these shipwrights and their families. It's best if no one dies. Treat them as knight prisoners, not serfs. Liszt was not in a very good mood. He captured the shipwrights in the name of destroying the Eagle Kingdom's maritime forces. But in essence, it was still a matter of capturing serfs, doing the same thing as those mercenary groups. The dignified Dragon Knight always felt embarrassed doing this kind of thing, so he was not going to show up in the following battle. Unless there were great noble lords participating in the battle, he would not capture them to avoid too many casualties. Unfortunately, along the way he did not know if the news had leaked, but he did not see many Sky Knights. After a few days he had only captured 11 Sky Knights, 2 of whom were sword saints, 4 of whom were earls, and the rest were viscounts. They wanted to come to the sea to make a career, and the local great lords were probably not willing to take the risk. After the defeat in the Battle of Dragon Slaying, the great nobles of the Eagle Kingdom understood that the sea was not a place they could roam freely. Only those small nobles with strength and ambition, but no status, were willing to take the risk of sailing in an attempt to fight for outstanding military achievements. The war continued. Liszt stayed on the flame every day, happy and contented. Of course, Lee William and Mesiro would take care of the boatman's family. Among the few Sky Knights, 7 of them had already written letters and were prepared to send them to the families of the boatmen to pay the ransom when the war ended. An ordinary Sky Knight needed 1 lesser elf, which had to be a grain or a magic potion. A sword saint needed 2 lesser elves, which had to be a grain or a magic potion. There were also 4 Sky Knights who, because they couldn't afford to pay or were unwilling to pay, simply asked Liszt to follow them and follow him. The behavior of these 4 Sky Knights was reasonable. You can follow me, but you need to prove your worth. Go, follow my orders of chivalry and fight together. Capture the surrounding castles and I will calculate your military achievements. Liszt said to these 4 Sky Knights. He needed their sincerity. Derek Iron Armor, Joyce Dandelion, Speck, and Vernal Ink. Therefore, they personally participated in the siege against the Eagle Kingdom's orders of chivalry. This was a move to surrender, which meant that they would not be able to establish a foothold in the Eagle Kingdom, and could only follow List to the end. Accepting their surrender, List gave them some time to organize their supplies, bring their families, and board the fleet. List continued to protect the Sapphire Fleet, repeatedly galloping along the coast, cleaning up the remnants of the Eagle Kingdom's fleet. The expedition lasted for half a month. The Eagle Kingdom did not show any signs of the Dragon Knight participating in the war, allowing the Sapphire Fleet to cut off the hands of the Eagle Kingdom, which had reached out to the sea for the first time. Woo 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 woo. The horn sounded, announcing the end of the War of the Sea. The Sapphire Knight, who had plundered a lot, began to board the ships and leave the coast with a large number of knight captives, craftsmen, and serfs. Those ships of the Eagle Kingdom that could be sailed away, and those that could not were sunk in the sea. Chapter 796. On the way back, List was complacent. The sea war ended smoothly, and the Eagle Kingdom's naval forces were almost destroyed. The Azure Sea became the Grand Duchy of Sapphire's inland sea again, and there was no longer any hindrance. Sea trade would also be much safer. Now, the trade of glass, white paper, and sea salt in the Flame territory had been slowly developed. There were no ships of the Eagle Kingdom on the sea, which was very convenient for him to smuggle with Marquis Nuteo. Serfs had always been List's most anticipated trade goods, and in this sea war, almost all the shipbuilders of the Eagle Kingdom were captured by him. Tens of thousands of shipbuilders were bound to expand the development of shipbuilding in the Flame territory and provide more ships for the territory in the near future. In addition to the captured sailors and captains, a huge sailing fleet could be formed in a short time to prepare for the relocation of the territory and the exploration of the new island. The population is always the biggest constraint. In the future, this kind of sea war, expansion order, and other similar campaigns have to be launched. While the Eagle Kingdom is weak, I have to bite off a few pieces of fat. Otherwise, even if I occupy an island larger than the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, I still can't develop. But in fact, building a country was probably just a realization of List's self-worth. He did not necessarily have to build a perfect country. It was enough to feed the dragon. He was excited for a moment, and then he called out the smoke mission. Mission. With Achi's constant care, the mangrove forest is becoming more and more prosperous, and the ducklings and little firebirds are growing. Mangrove Fairy Nami is in a good mood every day. Let her continue to be so. Reward, a mangrove fairy. The mission was still the previous mission, and it was not completed. List was not too anxious about this. After all, it was the evolution of a fairy, and it could not be rushed. But he was concerned about another situation. In the previous festivals and wars, there were missions with unknown rewards. Why did there not appear this time? Is it because Nami's evolution mission was not completed, and the unknown reward mission was delayed? Or is it because I have become a Dragon Knight and can lead the war, so I don't have to wait for the war to end? He did not know. He could only wait for the next war to start and see if there would continue to be missions with unknown rewards. He thought that nothing would happen on the way back, but Achi gave him a huge surprise. Every day, she would control the water spout to propel the flame. She was already extremely familiar with water magic, and she would often practice super magic to familiarize herself with the nature of super magic. Finally, during today's voyage, an inspiration suddenly flashed in her mind. Big brother Achi understands. Achi understands how water magic transforms into ice magic. It is the movement of magic particles that brings about different properties. And if Achi wants to switch the nature of the magic power of elemental incarnation, she needs to change the movement of the particles. Well, isn't this the connection between the motion of particles and the nature of magic power that I've told you before? List remembered talking about the motion of particles. He had also asked Achi to conduct a special study to confirm the existence of magic particles. Achi nodded and said, Big brother did say that before, but Achi always thought that particle motion was just pure particle motion. This time, the particle motion I thought of was the internal motion of particles. Well, a more vivid analogy should be that the particle motion that I previously thought was similar to the revolution of a planet, but this time, the particle motion is the rotation of a planet. Revolution, rotation. With that said, List instantly understood. I see. Then have you completed the switch to elemental incarnation of the ice attribute? It's basically done. Big brother, please look with the eye of magic. Achi stood at the bow of the ship and raised her left hand. Her snow-white and slender palm did not move much, but in the vision of the eye of magic, the light blue water attribute magic power gradually faded, turned white, and finally became a snow-white color. She had completed the switch of the nature of the magic power. Soon, the nature of the ice attribute was completed on her left arm. The nature of the magic power changed at the elbow, but the body was still water magic. Big brother, Achi's elemental incarnation is still a little difficult for the time being, but I can already release ice magic. Magic power operated. The magic net appeared. The next moment a waterspout rose. When it rose to the bow of the ship, the waterspout suddenly made a cracking sound and quickly froze. Clatter. The frozen icicle fell on the bow and broke into several pieces. Wonderful! List exclaimed loudly. As expected of my good Achi, in terms of magic talent, you are stronger than any other magician. I can imagine how powerful you will be after you complete the change of the nature of all the magic attributes. Achi showed a slightly playful smile. Can Achi beat Big Brother? Well, don't be arrogant, little girl. I am a fire dragon knight, and my strength will become stronger and stronger in the future. But I look forward to the day when you and I can break through the shackles of Dragon Knight and Magic Shooter and climb to a more powerful realm. The world is vast, and we need to see more. If Big Brother wants to see the world, Achi will go with Big Brother. Of course, I will bring you along. The fleet was still sailing on the sea, and List had already returned to the territory on the Flame. Since Achi became a magic shooter, sailing was nothing more than traveling around by high-speed rail. Even during the Battle of the Sea, he let Achi return to the territory many times to bring supplies to the Dodo Island to take care of the light green gem dragon. This light green gem dragon, which had been asleep for half a year, could fly for a short period of time after a month of recuperation. Its energy had recovered quite well. But there was another piece of news that was not very happy. The exploration ship led by Yevich Peanut explored the area around the new island for a few days, but still did not find a second island. It was basically confirmed that this was an isolated island. It was not an archipelago, just an isolated island. Therefore, the development value of this island, which had high hopes placed on it, was greatly reduced. In any case, continue to search for the archipelago. I will send a few palace speedboats to help you explore the sea and try to find a suitable archipelago as soon as possible. Even so, once the sailing distance exceeded 5,000 kilometers, List was ready to give up exploring the southern waters, turn back, and explore the northwest waters of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. There was also an endless ocean there, and perhaps there were archipelagos, but the location was not good. At that time, perhaps List would not have to face the Eagle Kingdom, but the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. But who cares? I already have 2 dragons and a magic shooter. Even if it's the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, I will still rob it. Many dragons, willful. Chapter 797. After the war, it was time to count the dividends and digest the war gains. Tens of thousands of boatmen and their families, thousands of knight and their families, were arranged to wait in Iron Shoe City. After careful screening, these boatmen and knight would be moved to Black Horse Island. List did not worry much about these jobs. He only needed to show up and accept the loyalty of the screen knight. The construction of the Flame territory was booming, and the search for overseas islands was also cautious. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Among the captured knight, 2 more knights swore allegiance to List, and one of them was a sacred swordsman earl. Durut, are you really going to give up your earl fief and title in the kingdom of Eagle and follow me? List was surprised by the choice of the sacred swordsman earl, Durut Red Apricot. To become an earl in the kingdom of Eagle, it was impossible for him to be without a foundation. To be willing to give up the Earl fief, this courage could not be underestimated. Since Durut made his decision, he said very calmly, "Your Royal Highness, I do have an Earl fief, and my family is very prosperous. However, my territory Binhai was originally waiting for His Royal Highness Alonso's plan to succeed and make meritorious service from the sea. But now that the Kingdom of Eagle's sea plan is over, my progress has been blocked." List could not deny this. Durut continued, "But your Royal Highness plans to establish a new country, and opportunities to make meritorious service are everywhere. And with the strength of your Royal Highness and Archmage Achilles, dominating the Aqua Sea is just around the corner. My defeat and capture may be the guidance of the glory of the night." Defeated and captured, but still able to speak of the glory of the night. List wanted to laugh a little, but he did not. "Now that you have made a decision, you can swear allegiance to me, but the ransom still needs to be paid, and I will retain your title of Earl. You can form your own orders of chivalry, fight with me, and occupy a place in the new country." "Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Durut Red Apricot is willing to drive for Your Royal Highness." Originally, the List family did not intend to keep the noble lords who surrendered to them, and continued to keep their titles. However, when he thought about it carefully, once the new country was established, there would be many deserted islands waiting to be built. Instead of making him work himself, it was better to throw this trouble to these followers who had defected, keep their titles, and let them frantically plunder the mainland in order to develop the island. In this way, he only needed to focus on the development of a few large islands. For the sake of their own interests, the nobles who surrendered to him would no longer have anything to do with the Eagle Kingdom. Just like the nobles of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, even if the island was not rich, they were still willing to stay and develop in Sapphire because they could rob it. This was especially so when one could only rob others, but others could not rob oneself. This feeling was especially addictive and irresistible. List had also tasted the sweetness after a few exploration orders. Now all he wanted was to snatch. If the Eagle Kingdom dared to play the dragon-slaying war, he would rob the Eagle Kingdom to the end and ruthlessly cut off a few pieces of fat meat. So, he publicized the surrender of Duarte Red Apricot. Of the remaining 5 Sky Knights who were unwilling to surrender, 3 of them decided to surrender after hesitating. Only 2 Sky Knights were unwilling to surrender and were only willing to pay the ransom to return to the Eagle Kingdom. Calculating the time, their families should have sent the ransom over. After recruiting 9 Sky Knight followers in a row, List was in a good mood, and he wantonly awarded titles in his territory, rewarding the elder followers of the territory. The captain of the expedition fleet, Yevich, was promoted from a civilian to a viscount, which was equivalent to restoring his official position, but the fief was not yet determined. List also promised that when he found a suitable archipelago to build a country, he would be directly promoted to count. Garcia, head of the Orders of Chivalry of the Iron Hoof City, was promoted from a civilian to a viscount, which was equivalent to restoring his official position, but the fief was not yet determined. Fox, head of the Orders of Chivalry of the Black Horse Island, was promoted from a civilian to a viscount, which was also equivalent to restoring his official position, but the fief was not yet determined. These 2 former followers of Alonso Cyclamen have been completely integrated into the Flame territory. Marcus, consultant of the Kelp City and head of the Orders of Chivalry, was promoted from a Lord Knight to a Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. Gort, consultant of the Iron Hoof City, was promoted from a Lord Knight to a Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. Charles, head of the Black Horse Island Security, was promoted from a Lord Knight to a Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. In addition, 7 followers, including Griffin Haystack, who were originally promoted to Lord Knight, were all promoted to Baron, and the fief was not yet determined. In addition, Paris, the head of the Black Horse Island Patrol, Blair, the administrative officer of the Iron Hoof City, Isaiah, the administrative officer of the Kelp City, Zambrata, the diplomat of the Black Horse Island, Costo, the maritime officer of the Black Horse Island, and other major officials of the territory, as well as the main members of the Orders of Chivalry list, were directly promoted to Baron. There were also a large number of middle-level officials and Earth Knights who were awarded the title of Lord Knight, completing the transformation from civilians to nobles. Although many people's promotions and titles did not meet the requirements for military service, List did not care at all. They were all empty promises anyway. When the islands were found, these promises would be fulfilled. If they could not be found, then they would just be an honorary title for life. If they were found, then they would be like the surrendered Sky Knights, choosing any deserted island. No matter what the situation would become in the future. At least now the entire Flame territory was boiling. The knight and officials who were promoted and titled were in high spirits, praising the greatness of List. The officials were full of energy, the knight was loyal, and the Flame territory's foundation, which had been impetuous because of the rapid expansion, was quickly solidified. Everyone felt the benefits of following the Dragon Knight. Now that the country had not yet been founded, they just followed him out to rob once, and the glory was spread. How much glory could be spread in the future when the country was founded? Especially the 9 new Sky Knights, who had already swept away the resentment of being captured, and began to look forward to List's country. As a result, under the Flame Marquis List now had an Earl follower, Durut Red Apricot, 11 Viscount followers, more than 30 Baron followers, and hundreds of Lord Knight followers. A simple team of Marquis followers was quickly built, which would also be the foundation for the future country. In addition to the team of followers of Marquis Oxdale, the basic framework for the country was basically completed. In a good mood, List gathered most of his followers at his Thorn Castle and ate and drank for several days. In this extravagant atmosphere of nobility, Achi gradually completed the ice elemental incarnation. Because of her care, Nami, who was happy every day, finally began to wither. Wither meant that she was evolving. Chapter 798. Mission. May is the season for plants to grow vigorously. The crops on Black Horse Island continue to grow. As the Lord, you have not performed your duty of patrolling the territory for a long time. Why not patrol the crops in the territory and check the growth of the crops? Reward: a large number of sprite worms. Nami's evolution mission had just ended, and the new mission brought a large number of sprites to List. After several years of plowing and fertilizing, Black Horse Island's crops were far more lush than those on other islands, so the birth of sprite worms began to increase. This time, List and Achi operated magic eyes and magic pupils together and carefully inspected the land and sea of the island. He found 3 wheat sprites, 1 barley sprite, 1 thorn sprite, 1 pea sprite, 1 rubber sprite, 1 peanut sprite, 1 red tree sprite, 1 corn sprite, 1 sweet coconut sprite, 2 algae sprite. He named them black algae worm and brown algae worm, and let Achi contract them. He didn't want to sign a contract with sprite worms himself. He thought it was too troublesome. There were a total of 16 sprite worms. This was the result of more than 3 years of scientific farming on Black Horse Island under the leadership of List, building toilets, piling manure, building ditches, artificial irrigation, selecting fine seeds, fine farming, weeding and pruning, and reasonable lighting. The Guild of Magic has a special research group to study the relationship between scientific farming and sprite worm breeding, and preliminary conclusions have been drawn through big data. Sprite worm breeding is a probability event, that is to say, this thing is related to genetic mutation. It has nothing to do with how well the plant grows, but keeping the plant vigorous and healthy has a great protection for the breeding of sprite worms. Malnourished plants that have just mutated into sprite worms will abort in the next moment, but healthy crops on Black Horse Island are difficult to abort. Therefore, scientific farming is a powerful means to greatly increase the number of sprite worms. At present, the secret of sprite worms has not been solved. This is the only way to promote the growth of sprite worms. Mission completed. Reward: a large number of sprite worms. These 16 sprite worms were basically in the process of breeding, but the territory soon ushered in another large number of sprites. The Sky Knight followers who surrendered to List migrated their families to Black Horse Island. 2 Sky Knights who were unwilling to surrender also paid the ransom and left Black Horse Island. After paying the ransom, there were a total of 3 sprites: an oat sprite, a peanut sprite, and a sisal sprite. As for the sprites of the 11 followers, they had contributed a total of 12 sprites. Among them, Earl Duroot Red Apricot had contributed 2 corn sprites, 3 barley sprites, 1 orange sprite, 1 mango sprite, 1 licorice sprite, 1 glutinous rice sprite, and 1 apple sprite. He had also obtained a black nightshade fairy and a bramble fairy. Originally, there were 2 sky knights who wanted to trade grain sprites, but List found out that they had contracted black nightshade and thorn sprites. Without a doubt, they immediately exchanged these 2 sprites for ransom. These sky knights were very shabby and did not even have a big sprite. The remaining sprites also entered Black Horse Island to temporarily help List with farming, but List would pay them according to the contribution of the sprites. In short, this was the transitional stage. With the support of the dream of founding a nation, no one would raise too many objections. Now the number of sprites in the territory has skyrocketed. War is the easiest way to make money. My trade businesses are still far from the wealth of war. The most important thing is that trade profits flow slowly, but the benefits of war come in an instant. After counting his gains from the sea battle, List was in a good mood and looked at the new smoke mission. After the war, the Sky Knights have nothing to do. Instead of sitting around in the territory, why not find something for them to do? The arrival of a large number of shipwrights has allowed the shipbuilding industry on Black Horse Island to flourish. Please build a 3-masted sailboat that meets the standard. Reward, the abnormality of the Heart Island. It was not difficult to build a 3-masted sailboat and find something for the knights to do. List had already planned this for a long time. He ordered 10 Palace fast sailboats from the Sapphire family, and was ready to arrange another 6 Palace fast sailboats to form 2 expedition fleets to join the island search in the southern waters. At present, the progress of Yevich's expedition fleet search was not very satisfactory. The expedition fleet was equipped with wind-calming beads and water-calming beads, and the offshore waters were free to gallop, but the exploration results were limited. In fact, Yevich could not be blamed for not paying attention. The speed of the fleet was limited, and the sea was infinite. It was really difficult to find the island. Adding 2 more expedition fleets to make up 3 fleets and 9 Palace fast sailboats should greatly expand the scope of the sea search. If we can find it, we should find it as soon as possible and develop it as soon as possible. If we can't find it, we should move to the sea area as soon as possible and explore the sea area of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. After thinking, his eyes were fixed on the abnormality of the Heart Island. There are still problems with the Heart Island. The light emerald mine seems to be ready for mining. It is time to mine and investigate the real secrets inside the Heart Island. List was a man of action. With the reminder of the smoke mission, he immediately decided to take action to investigate. The members of the investigation were limited to him and a chi. The flame whistled across the sea and arrived at the Heart Island a few hours later. The island, which had all the crystal cyathea ferns cut down and a chi baptized with seawater, was bare. There were no new saplings in the place where the heart fruit tree had grown. A chi, check if there are any abnormalities on the Heart Island. After landing on the island, List immediately began to investigate. However, he did not have the intention to find any abnormalities. The smoke mission had not been completed yet, and the abnormalities on the Heart Island might not have occurred yet. Therefore, it was better to nip the problem in the bud. Or perhaps he could discover the abnormalities ahead of time and directly change the mission, starting a new one. Unfortunately, after a careful inspection, he did not find any abnormalities on the Heart Island. However, there was already a layer of light green crystals under the soil layer. List excavated a crystal mine and found 2 light green gems the size of a fist scattered around. So these are the light green gems produced by the light emerald dragon Ethan. It doesn't seem to be very abundant. Even if the entire island has become a light green gem mine, there wouldn't be too many gems left. I'm sorry for the blood essence that the light green gem dragon leaked back then. However, it's hard to say. Perhaps the heart fruit tree absorbed too much. However, he soon discovered that the magic within the crystal mine was still flowing slowly, as if it was nurturing new light green gems. Does this mean that the light green gem mine is actually not fully developed? Chapter 799. He returned from Heart Island without success. List couldn't wait to urge the construction of the Black Horse Island dock. He is a person full of contradictions. Sometimes he is leisurely, but sometimes he can't wait to get results. However, the development of the shipbuilding industry is not easy to bear fruit. Even with the guidance of the Sapphire family shipbuilders, even if the original shipbuilders of the territory fumbled and studied, they still did not have a good grasp of the three-masted sailboat technology. Time passed by as they accumulated technology and continued to experiment. While waiting silently for the dock to build the three-masted sailboat, List also calmed down and carefully polished the Fire Dragon Knight, Dragon Battle Aura secret book. One day, when he was inspecting the craftsmen in the subway, he saw the blacksmiths regularly beating the iron blocks with sledgehammers and small hammers, slowly hammering the red-hot iron blocks into shape. He suddenly flashed countless inspirations. Soon afterward, he created the fifth move according to the inspiration of the hammering earth-shaking. Since then, the Dragon Battle Aura secret book has 5 moves. Dragon Slash, Burning the Sky, Swallowing the Sun, Boiling the Sea, and Earth-Shaking Hammer. Together with the little fire dragon Leo, the strength of the Fire Dragon Knight skyrocketed. Although the next stage of the Dragon Knight practice is still unknown, at the current stage, his strength can continue to skyrocket. According to his experience of riding 2 dragons, his combat power is about half of the peak stage Light Emerald Dragon Knight. Once he becomes a peak stage Fire Dragon Knight, his strength will surpass that of the peak stage Light Emerald Dragon Knight. To put it bluntly, the peak stage Dragon Knight is equivalent to the Earth Knight with fighting skills. The method of taking drugs is unknown. I can only improve my strength by constantly honing my fighting skills. After the soul is complete, I am afraid that I can only improve my strength by constantly honing the Dragon Battle Aura secret book. List sighed with emotion, but soon he was relieved. Other Dragon Knights can only waste time in the Dragon Knight stage, but I have a clue about the next stage of the Dragon Knight. With the help of the smoke mission and the effect of the magic eye, it will not be difficult to find a way to break through the Dragon Knight stage. With the smoke mission, which was suspected to be the power of destiny, List's self-confidence was so free and easy. June arrived in the blink of an eye. The light green gem dragon's body had already recovered, and it could fight in the sky and display its might. Of course, its foundation was still weak, and it would take several years of recuperation before it could return to its peak. No matter what. List left the little fire dragon Leo to sleep on Black Horse Island and went to Dodo Island. He rode the light emerald dragon Ethan and migrated south. He planned to take the light emerald dragon with a chi to a new island that had not yet been explored. That is, the large island south of the first island. Not only was the island lush with vegetation, but it also had a lot of World of Warcraft, which was barely enough to keep Ethan. Furthermore, List would often provide it with potions and other resources, so it was barely enough to keep one dragon on an island. This is just a stopgap measure. When they found an archipelago suitable for building a country, List would build a dragon nest for Ethan and Leo to raise the 2 dragons. Perhaps not only these 2, but his old friend, the invisible dragon, should also come. The invisible dragon comes once a year. I've been talking about it for a while now. I don't know if the invisible dragon was tricked by the smoke mission and flew here. This time, in addition to giving it a good meal of smoked grass and roast beef, I also want to give it a mystifying dragon's mind fruit. The value of the space gem is far greater than any other gem. The most important thing is that he has 3 dragons, which is more than enough to build a kingdom across the sea and annex the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Perfect. Just as he was fantasizing about the beautiful future, Lucy hurried down the stairs. Your Highness, news from the expedition fleet. What's the news? Captain Yevich sent a message that they have found a new archipelago. They have explored 3 islands. The distance between the islands is relatively close, and these 3 islands are very large. The largest is the size of Coral Island, and the smallest is the size of Black Horse Island. There are many coral reefs around it. Is that so? List couldn't sit still. He calmed down his excitement and went upstairs with Lucy. Lucy was fiddling with the magic platform. The sound of the magic reaction came from the compass, and she was recording something with one hand. After a period of training, the twins with good magic talent have become qualified operators and transmitters. They operate the magic platform rhythmically like a DJ in a nightclub. Your Highness. Seeing List arrive, Lucy immediately put down the quill in her hand and bowed to List. No need to be so polite. Operate the magic platform seriously. What did Yevich say? Lucy moved a chair, and List sat down. Captain Yevich's fleet has continued to set off, following the terrain of the islands to search other sea areas, and to determine the number and size of the new islands as soon as possible. Very good. Contact Yevich for me. The magic platform has entered the 3.0 era. Its functions have been further improved, and the quality of communication has greatly improved. Although it wasn't as convenient as natural communication, it could transmit more information like chatting. After half an hour of repeated communication, List basically understood the location of the new islands. It was only 400 kilometers away from the island where the light green gem dragon was temporarily living. The location was slanted to the southwest. The first island is 500 kilometers away from the new island, and the new island is 400 kilometers away from the new islands. This is a bit exciting. This should be the real islands. The first island is only a remote corner of the continental shelf. The new islands are the real highlands of the continental shelf. He immediately ordered Yevich to search for the new islands, and ordered the other 2 exploration fleets to immediately move towards the new islands. They could explore this new islands together. The communication with the magic platform ended. Leaning against the back of the chair, List leisurely tasted a cup of green tea sent by Mrs. Morrison. Lucy asked curiously, Your Highness, if we find the new islands, will we be able to establish our own country? Of course. Will Your Highness become a king? That depends on the situation. Maybe I will only become a Grand Duke. Then our country will be called the Flame Grand Duchy. If I have more dragons, then I will directly become a king, and our country will be called the Flame Kingdom. List said with a smile. He had a good impression of the clever and cute twins. The 2 little Lolas were not only cute, they were talented, and their personalities were also very likable. These twin sisters, he gradually felt like his own daughters were growing up. List, whose soul was already more than 30 years old, and the twins, who were less than 10 years old, did indeed have a father and daughter age gap, as well as a sense of expectation for his daughter to grow into phoenixes. A few days ago. Chapter 800. Your Highness, when you and Teacher Achi explore the new islands, can you take me and my sister with you? Ruth asked with her big, cute eyes. Lucy hurriedly scolded. Ruth, don't make rude requests to His Highness. Although Ruth was a little bold, she did not dare to defy her sister. She could only bow to List and apologize. I'm sorry, Your Highness. Ruth was too reckless. Please forgive me. List waved his hand. Don't be nervous, Lucy. Ruth. If your teacher Achi doesn't refuse, there's nothing wrong with taking you with her. It was a pleasant and interesting thing to have 2 cute little Lolas companions on a voyage, not to mention that they could control the magic stage. Therefore, Achi, who was researching how a dragon turtle could mutate into a lightning dragon turtle from Dragon Turtle Island, quickly agreed to the sisters' request. Under List's urging, she had already accepted Lucy and Ruth as her magic apprentices. The twins' former teacher, Chris Truth, did not object to this at all. She even envied the twins for being able to listen to the magic shooter's teachings at any time. Of course, Chris actually thought too much. Achi was the twins' teacher in name, but she had no intention of teaching them in private. She only liked to study magic on her own or assign some research tasks to mages. She did not like to communicate with others, let alone teach. It was indeed a waste for a magic shooter to teach magic apprentices. Any ordinary mage from the Guild of Magic could complete the teaching. Thank you, teacher. Thank you, Your Highness. The twins cheered excitedly. List nodded and said, Go and pack your luggage. We'll leave at any time. He and Achi's sailing trip was to leave as soon as they said they would, without the slightest delay. At this time, Nami's weak cry came from a jade box hanging on the ceiling. Chirp! It flew out of the box and landed on Achi's palm, looking at Achi pitifully. It had not gone out to work for a while, but stayed in the laboratory, waiting for Achi's return, seeking the care of the owner of the contract. At this time, its expression was sad, still fighting against the hindrance of evolution. Achi holds Nami in her hand and smiles. "Don't worry, Nami. Achi will take you with me. We are going to explore the new world in the archipelago discovered by my brother." Tweet. Nami rubbed her head against Achi's fingers and dozed off with satisfaction. One day later, List arranged the affairs around him properly, and Achi handed over the busy magic experiments one by one, before setting off for the new islands. "Rumble! Walala! Off we go, see!" cried the twins merrily from the bow. Before coming to Black Horse Island, they were the children of serfs in the countryside of the Kingdom of Eagle and had never seen the sea in their lives. Coming to Black Horse Island to live, sailing is a common occurrence. He has long overcome his fear of the sea, but he still does not dare to swim in it. The blazing flame, loaded with fruits, vegetables, magic potions, and other supplies, followed the planned route and braved the wind and waves at a speed of 500 kilometers per hour. The new islands are about 4,000 kilometers away from Black Horse Island, according to Earth's data. It is probably the distance between the northernmost Bohai Sea in China and the southernmost South China Sea. The average speed of the Palace fast-sailing ship is about 10 knots, or 18 kilometers per hour, and can sail up to 400 kilometers a day with a downwind. The Sapphire family relied on the Palace fast-sailing ship to dominate the aquamarine sea, but there is a lot of headwind and windless sailing on the sea, so it can travel up to 200 kilometers a day. From Black Horse Island to the new islands, it takes 20 days for the Palace fast-sailing ship to sail. If it is replaced by a merchant ship with a speed of 3 knots, it will probably take 2 months, and that is if the sailing is smooth. However, for the blazing flame, there is no such thing as headwind, downwind, or windless. Achi controlled the waterspout to push and raced directly on the sea. 8 hours later, they had arrived at the location recorded on the nautical chart. Then List called out the little fire dragon Leo, flew into the blue sky and white clouds, and searched for land. The search went smoothly, and it took only 15 minutes to find the island. This was also the reason for the increasing accuracy of the nautical chart. Achi has been studying astrology for a long time, and combined with telescope technology, developed a set of devices that can measure the angle between the sun or other stars and the sea level or ground level. She also wrote a book, Star Orientation Light Measurement in Navigation, to direct the application of the device. After seeing this device, List directly grabbed the naming rights. Call it a sextant. In fact, it is a different version of a sextant. With a sextant, it is more accurate to measure the position of a ship during the voyage. Basically, to prevent the situation of getting lost at sea, the fleet from the Flame Territory used a sextant during the day and night, and only when it was cloudy would they look at the nautical compass, a device similar to a compass, which also pointed in one direction but not in a north-south direction, but in a direction of 15 degrees west by north. There is no theoretical explanation as to why it points in this direction. Achi set off in the 195-degree direction. The island is just ahead. After finding the island, List immediately contacted Achi. As for the 195-degree, it was List's invention. He combined it with the nautical compass, divided the position coordinates into 360 degrees, and clearly indicated each direction. 195 degrees was a little west by south. This invention originated from the game PlayerUnknown's Battleground, Battle Royale, that he played on Earth. There was a 360-degree direction indicator, which was very convenient for reminding teammates of the enemy's position. However, before the flame could approach the island, Lucy and Lucy shouted loudly, "Your Highness, Teacher, the magic platform has sent a message. The Discovery has encountered an unknown large whirlpool and is being swallowed by the whirlpool. It is calling for help." Achi immediately said, "Coordinates direction." After the twins reported the Discovery's position, the flame immediately changed direction and rushed towards the sea where the Discovery was located. Along the way, they maintained communication with the magic platform. The Discovery was still struggling, and the exploration and opportunity were too far away to rescue them, so they could only wait for the flame. Unfortunately, when Ichi continuously adjusted the direction and finally reached the vicinity of the large whirlpool, the Discovery's signal had disappeared from the magic platform. "Your Highness, teacher," Lucy said sadly, "I can't find the magic platform signal of the Discovery." List walked up to the bow of the flame. He was in a bad mood, but he still comforted himself. Accidents are inevitable when exploring the sea. They were the pioneers of a new country, and the new country will not forget their contributions. He looked up at the large whirlpool that seemed to be able to swallow the entire world. With Ichi controlling the waterspout, the flame slowly approached the large whirlpool. Chapter 801. Brother, the magic power of this whirlpool is very special, Ichi said after casting magic eyes and carefully observing the whirlpool. List also cast magic eyes to observe, and indeed, as Ichi said, this huge, mysterious, and almost motionless whirlpool had a special magic structure. Using magic eyes, one could not observe two obvious signs of magic power in ordinary seawater, but the whirlpool was full of blue-white water attribute light, and the closer to the center of the whirlpool, the brighter the magic light became, and the blue light was gradually overshadowed by the white light. The most peculiar thing was that the light seemed to have a fault. It was a special optical phenomenon, as if a large number of broken glass had been placed in the center of the whirlpool, disturbing the path of the light and making it incoherent. What's the reason for this? I don't know. Then let me ride a dragon and cast Dragon Eye Orbit to take a look, List said immediately. Brother, be careful. The magic power of this whirlpool is unusual. Ichi can feel that it is difficult to control the seawater in the periphery, and the central area is simply uncontrollable. Don't worry, I will only observe from the sky and will not approach the sea, List called out to Leo. Leo was somewhat dissatisfied with List, who repeatedly disturbed his rest. Roar. He had been sullen recently. Without the volcano on Dodo Island, the growth of his strength was limited, so he was naturally in a bad mood. Cooperate seriously and reward the potion when we return. List rode on the Dragon Tooth platform and quickly flew over the whirlpool. Casting Dragon Eye Orbit, the world became a clear visual effect. Every trace of flowing seawater was full of dynamic beauty. Magic lines outlined back and forth, rendering a different whirlpool. It was like an exquisite sculpture, and the messy magic colors vaguely revealed a mysterious law. As he continued to climb, the whirlpool continued to shrink, revealing its complete appearance. It was an irregular oval whirlpool, the edge somewhat similar to the Milky Way, with cantilevers extending out. The magic light of the cantilevers was brighter, but the brightest was in the center of the whirlpool, which was almost like a huge silver-white sun. However, there were clear signs of fracture in the small sun, which was the fracture of magic power. Strange. Just what kind of structure is this? The cracks seemed to form a gigantic magic array. List had been communicating with Ichi for many years, so he was no stranger to magic arrays. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it was a huge magic array. The cantilevers and the center reflected each other. Every magic crack was a part of the magic array. He subconsciously took out a notebook and a quill from his space ring and began to sketch a picture based on what he saw. After a while, after the sketch was completed, the rough lines of the magic array were basically completed according to the scale. Only then did he put away his pen and paper and descended toward the center of the great maelstrom to observe the situation. If one were to disperse the trail of the dragon eye and observe it with the naked eye, it would be a deep, pitch-black tunnel. The sea around the huge whirlpool was slanting toward the center in a parabola. When it reached the center, the parabola was almost a straight line. However, the water continued to spiral downwards, forming a circular well with a diameter of about 1 kilometer. It was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. When he used the trail of the dragon eye again, the deep whirlpool was immediately covered in dense magic power. The cracks were distributed at the position of the deep well, overlapping, intersecting, and juxtaposing, presenting a complex yet orderly situation. List took out a pen and paper again and drew the structure clearly. The two drawings of magic lines basically depicted the magic structure of the Great Maelstrom. List took a deep breath and steered Leo away from the center of the whirlpool. Before he understood the situation of the whirlpool, he did not dare to casually explore the deep whirlpool well. Indeed, he had the urge to dive in and solve the riddle, but a strong desire to survive dominated List, causing him to be cautious in all aspects. Bang! Jumping onto the bow of the flame, List handed the two drawings to Achi. Take a look at the magic structure of the Great Maelstrom. I feel like it's a huge magic array. I wonder if it's a naturally formed magic array or a magic array set up by some ancient magic shooters. Achi took the drawings and was quickly fascinated by them. As time passed, she still did not look up. She even found a seat, took out a notebook, and kept copying the drawings and revising the lines. From time to time, she would put down her pen and walk out to use the Eye of Magic to personally observe the Great Maelstrom before going back to continue revising. After a long time, Achi said again, "Brother, Achi wants to see the Great Maelstrom from the sky." "No problem." List summoned Leo and promised him 10 potions as a reward. He smoothly rode Leo and took Achi to the sky above the Great Maelstrom. "Brother, use the trail of the dragon eye to help Achi look at the details. Tell me, I'll explain it to you. What does the edge of the well on the left look like?" "It's the two intersecting fracture lines. It's zigzagging, and there's a groove in the middle. It's the point where the light suddenly broke. Look at this point and then look up about a finger's length. Do you see there? There's actually a groove hidden under the light." Well, Achi got it. What's the trajectory of the two parallel fracture lines at the 72-degree direction? One was asking, and the other was explaining. After half an hour, the sun set in the west, and it was already evening. Only then did Achi reluctantly ask List to send her back to the flame, which was already far away from the great whirlpool. She ate some fruits, and while List was eating heartily with Lucy and the twins, she continued to immerse herself in studying this huge magic formation that she had no idea how it was formed. It was already certain that it was a magic circle, but she had not deciphered the information of the magic circle. At night, Achi asked List to take her to the sky again to observe the magic structure of the Great Maelstrom at night. Her Eye of Magic was a super magic, but its effect was equivalent to List's Eye of Magic. It was not very strong and could not be compared to the trail of the dragon eye. However, List described what he saw in detail and let Achi perfect the magic circle bit by bit. In the middle of the night, when List was teasing Nami, who was not very energetic, Achi finally raised her head and said, "Brother, Achi has deciphered the Great Maelstrom. This is a naturally formed magic circle. It's a magic transmission circle." "Magic transmission circle?" List exclaimed unconsciously. This news was simply too explosive, and he couldn't remain calm. "You're saying that this Great Maelstrom is the teleportation formation I've been searching for all this time? Or that the teleportation formation that prevailed during the era of the Moon Empire really exists?" Achi nodded seriously. "Yes." At the same time, in an unknown location, several campfires were lit. The injured knight had hunted a few wild animals from the forest and gave them to the disabled who were cooking porridge by the campfire. Next to another campfire, 2 magicians in magic cloaks were fiddling with a broken compass-shaped device. The knight in the lead dropped the game and walked to the side of the magician. He said, "Sir Glanny, is the magic stage repaired? We must contact His Highness as soon as possible." Chapter 802. This chapter is a guaranteed update on the 13th. A magic array. It's actually a magic array. List did not know how many times he had come to the bow of the ship and looked at the huge whirlpool in the distance. Under the illumination of the moonlight, the Great Maelstrom resembled the maw of a monstrous beast, sending chills down one's spine. However, List was filled with boundless excitement. Ever since he had traveled to this world, he had heard many legends about the Moon Empire. Among them, the most popular one was related to magic circles. Legend had it that, in the center of the legendary continent, there was a mountain called Gaudin. It was tens of thousands of meters high, and mortals could not climb it. Even the Dragon Knight could not fly to the top. The violent storm halfway up the mountain could tear humans and dragons into pieces. However, the Moon Empire had set up a magic array at the top of the mountain. Thus, according to legend, those magic shooters could climb the mountain to light the magic array and teleport to the moon. The name of the Moon Empire originated from the moon, and even the name of Gaudin Mountain, Gaudin, was the modern translation of the ancient language of the moon, which meant guardian knight of moonlight. In the era of the Moon Empire, the knight training system already existed, but they all existed as squires of sorcerers. To this day, these matters regarding the magical teleportation portal had become nonsense. The weave had shrunk for some reason, and the dominance of the Magi had been overthrown by the night. The search for the truth could not compare to the thirst for dragons. The exploration of experiments could not compare to the rush for wealth. The exploration of magic could not compare to the worship of combat aura. Magic shooters had not appeared in this corner of the continent for hundreds of years, and mages had gradually degenerated into technicians who made magic equipment and refined potions. Occasionally, he would stir up some trouble and create some news, but he would not be able to affect the overall situation. Gradually, people began to deny the Moon Empire. They dismissed those things that were legendary but didn't exist in reality as nonsense. The teleportation magic array was one of the myths. Liszt had lost count of the number of times he had seen the real existence of the legendary things. He had developed a strong tolerance and began to believe that those teleportation portals, the humans on the moon, and the Elven King were all real. It was precisely this attitude that had allowed him to gradually develop his research into teleportation magic arrays. He never imagined that a teleportation magic array actually existed in this world. The surprise was too great. Achi, where do you think this teleportation magic array leads to? Can we teleport by jumping into it? He swallowed his saliva and guessed in a scorching tone. Does it lead to the Undersea Kingdom, to the moon, or to Mount Muragadon? Should we give it a try? Achi was not as enthusiastic as Liszt. She thought more about the teleportation array itself. Brother, the structure of this magic array is very stable. It may be able to teleport accurately without any errors. However, if you want to cross the teleportation array, you still need to do a lot of preparation work. Only by doing thorough research can you minimize the danger. Of course I know, but this is a teleportation magic circle. Achi. Yes, I know. Achi smiled. Liszt was a little disappointed to see Achi forcing a smile in response to his excitement. Everything about Achi was good, except that she was a little quiet. She was becoming more and more like a straight-A student. As an underachiever, Liszt admired, respected, and envied the top students, but in fact, he wanted to go crazy with the underachiever even more. In short, it was Achi's turn to arrange various experiments and research on the teleportation magic array. On the other side, Nigel Barkskinshield was seriously recording the ship's log. As one of the first elite Earth Knight of the Eagle Kingdom to surrender to Liszt, he was put in an important position and was appointed as the captain of the Discovery. He was lucky to survive this special shipwreck. His first task was to save the ship, and his second task was to record the log, to ensure that His Highness could keep abreast of the situation of the expedition. He looked up. He glanced at the magician who was busy repairing the magic platform by the bonfire, then at the knight and sailors who were cooking porridge and barbecuing meat, and at the side of the Discovery that had been smashed into a pile of broken wood. Then he looked at the vast primitive jungle around him, and the huge mountain waterfall that was rushing under the moonlight in the distance. Nigel picked up a pen and began to write. There was a special black box in the captain's room to store pen, ink, paper, and other items used to write the log. The items inside were well preserved during the shipwreck. June 5th, the weather was clear. Everything happened so suddenly that I didn't know where to start writing. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Discovery set off from the third island of the new archipelago and continued southwest to search for the next island. The lookout found that the sea ahead was very large, so I ordered a closer observation. Unexpectedly, just as the ship approached the waves, It was swept away by the turbulent undercurrent and began to spiral forward. Captain Nigel immediately opened the water-calming orb kept in the captain's room. Unfortunately, after activating the water-calming orb, it still could not calm the seemingly calm but dangerous undercurrent. The Discovery uncontrollably approached the depths of the whirlpool. By the time the lookout discovered the whirlpool, it was already too late to stop it. So they could only ask for help from List and report the situation using the magic platform. But before the flame could come to their rescue, the Discovery had already slid into the depths of the whirlpool and was swallowed by the deep whirlpool amidst the panic of the crew. The hull is seriously tilted. Everyone has to hold on to the railing to stand firm. The whirlpool sea is getting more and more tilted. The sky is hanging upside down. Soon we can no longer see the sun, only the turbulent whirlpool sea spinning above our heads. The force of the ship's rotation is getting stronger. Some sailors can't hold on and fell into the sea, disappearing without a trace. Just like that, the Discovery spiraled forward on the whirlpool's parabolic sea, being pulled step by step into the deep whirlpool. At that time, it was like being swept into the waves and surfing. I grabbed the rudder but couldn't control any direction. The Discovery even began to disintegrate. There were planks falling off one by one. Just when I thought I was going to die, the only light disappeared and darkness came. The water suddenly stabilized, but the Discovery was still moving forward at high speed. I don't know how long it took. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. I wanted to speak, but my mouth was open, but I couldn't say a word. Even my hands and feet couldn't move. I saw countless arcs of light flashing around me, like lightning or aurora. The next moment, a dazzling light shone, and then I felt my body flying. It wasn't just me flying, but the Discovery was flying. When I could open my eyes, I saw the sky spinning violently. I could see the lush forests and tall mountains, as well as the bright sunlight on the horizon. Unfortunately, the next second, the Discovery crashed into the forest. There was a loud rumble and a strong dizziness hit. Nigel almost fainted. When I endured the pain all over my body and crawled out of the damaged captain's cabin, I was shocked to find that the Discovery had fallen into a pile of rotten wood, and the place where we crashed had become a wild forest. The huge mountain waterfall in the distance made me realize that the Discovery had flown out of the cave at the mouth of the waterfall. Chapter 803. Closing the logbook. Nigel Barkskin's shield began to patrol the simple camp built next to the ruins of the Discovery. It was surrounded by forest, and he had to be on high alert. Otherwise, if the World of Warcraft approached, it would threaten the survival of the crew. At that moment, he suddenly heard something above his head. It seemed to be the sound of something piercing through the air. Then, there was a loud bang in the forest in the distance. What's going on? Nigel and the others immediately tensed up. Unfortunately, it was nighttime, and they did not dare to leave the camp and search in the forest. After a while, when there was no more movement, Nigel relaxed a little. He temporarily put aside the idea of searching and began to enjoy a simple lunch with the night. No matter how simple it was still better than the salted meat and vegetables on the voyage. Unfortunately, there was no campfire atmosphere. Not only did they have to worry about the forest, but they also had to worry about the unknown world. They did not know what they had encountered. In the blink of an eye, they had come from the vast sea to the endless forest. They did not know how far they had traveled. They did not know if they had appeared on an island near the Great Maelstrom, or in some other corner of the world. Let us mourn for the lost crew members. After setting up the simple tableware, Nigel motioned for everyone to mourn. Out of the 100 crew members of the Discovery, 16 were missing, 52 were dead, and only 32 survived. 7 of them were seriously injured, and it was unknown if they could survive. The mourning had just ended. There was another whoosh above their heads, followed by a loud rumble in the forest in the distance. It was as if a large rock had fallen from the sky. It was much weaker than a meteorite, but the ground still trembled slightly. Nigel could no longer ignore the commotion. At that moment, Mage Glanny Truth, who was repairing the magic platform, suddenly said, "I understand. It's Her Highness." Her Highness? Of course it's Her Highness. Her Highness has discovered the Great Maelstrom and is studying it. Glanny was very excited. The Great Acheron will definitely be able to decipher the secret of the Great Maelstrom and come to save us. We need to stay here and repair the magic platform and cooperate with Her Highness and Acheron. Then, he loudly announced, "We will not rest tonight. We will repair the magic platform overnight and contact Her Highness as soon as possible." The other magician also nodded deeply. "I support Sir Glanny's opinion." Naturally, the knights had no objections. After all, the repair work was done by the magicians, and they only needed to assist. As if to prove Glanny's guess, every 10 minutes or so, a stone or something wood was past his head. Tracing back to the source, it just so happened to be that tall waterfall mountain. The surviving crew members of the unknown forest were eagerly waiting for the High Mage to finish his research. And that was indeed the case. From time to time, the flame would transport rocks, trees, World of Warcraft, and other objects from the nearby islands and throw them into the Great Whirlpool to study the changes of the objects as they passed through the whirlpool. List rode on Leo and hovered in the air above the big whirlpool. He used the Dragon Eye's orbit and kept peeking at the details of the magic composition of the big whirlpool. In the end, all the information was gathered in Achi's hands. This was a very complicated change. Even after dozens of experiments, she still couldn't figure it out. "Big brother, Achi doesn't know if this is a man-made magic array, but the principles behind its operation are too profound. There are many parts that Achi doesn't understand at all. Don't worry, be patient. We can use this place as a long-term magic experiment site." List guessed that the crew of the Discovery had probably perished. So after calming down from his excitement, he wasn't in a hurry to explore what the other side of the teleportation array looked like. The big whirlpool was here and wouldn't run away. There was no need to be anxious. He immediately ordered the exploration and opportunity to continue searching for other islands in the new archipelago. He also sent the other 2 exploration fleets to search for other islands. There was no need for them to investigate and explore the big whirlpool here. Other than Achi, who could control the flow of water to resist, the others had no resistance. Late at night, Achi lacked experimental materials, so she decided to make a trip back to Thorn Castle. List suggested, "Why don't we pull some of the mages over and put them on an island not far from the big whirlpool? We can set up a magic laboratory to crack the big whirlpool. I feel that it will take at least a year and a half before the secret of the teleportation array can be completely unraveled." "Yeah." Achi nodded. So the flame made its way back through the night and returned to the newly built dock at the mouth of the canal to the sea under the sun the next day. List personally coordinated the mages of the Guild of Magic. "Chris, come and confirm a list of great mages. This list needs to be of a trustworthy level, and great mages who can be transferred out for a long period of time and obey orders." Chris was already a qualified administrator. She immediately gave a list. "The Guild of Magic has gathered 18 great mages, and 7 of them meet your requirements, Your Highness. They are Kenley, Lars, Solaire, Delaka. Then first arrange for Kenley, Lars, Solaire, and Delaka, and then select a group of trustworthy mages to follow the magic shooters to carry out field research projects overseas." Kenley was a member of the Magic Elephant family from Iron and Steel Ridge. Lars and the other 2 were once List's captives. They had already integrated into the Guild of Magic and were happy and content. Kenley had even been elected as the vice president of the Guild of Magic. Chris was the executive vice president. "Your Highness, may I know what kind of research project it is?" Chris asked curiously. There was nothing to hide from Chris. List said straightforwardly, "You should already know about the huge whirlpool that our expedition fleet discovered at sea. Achi has determined that the whirlpool is the ancient legendary teleportation magic array." "Teleportation magic array?" Chris's mouth was agape. Took a while for her to recover. "Your Highness, I request to personally participate in the research of the whirlpool." "You don't have to participate for the time being. The Guild of Magic can't do without your management, especially the experimental resources needed for magic research. We still need you to coordinate. List did not say what he was implying. In fact, Chris's research on the soul was not bad, but other aspects were ordinary. After all, she was just a newly advanced great mage, and had gradually transitioned to administrative work. She was gradually becoming unfamiliar with magic research. All right, I hope your highness can keep me informed of the progress of the research on the whirlpool. Of course, only by knowing the progress can you better allocate resources. At noon, Chris gathered Kenley and the other three. Chapter 804. This chapter is The Bug's Childhood. It takes a while to collect experimental equipment. Achi did not conduct theoretical research, but mainly prepared these experimental materials. It was expected to take a week to prepare. During this period, Achi went to the Maelstrom 3 times and helped explore the surrounding archipelagos. Eventually, she found 7 large islands within a week, with Black Horse Island as the standard. However, the largest one was the one discovered before, the size of Coral Island. In addition, there were many small islands and coral reefs scattered around. This archipelago obviously could not be used to establish a country. List named it the Second Archipelago. It could only be used as a transit supply point, which disappointed him. However, it was still very important to discover the ancient legendary teleportation magic array, so the value of the Second Archipelago was still very high. Spreading out the nautical map, List once again studied the map hand-drawn by Achi. 800 kilometers south of Black Horse Island were 3 islands, 1, 2, and 3, all smaller than Black Horse Island. 1,200 kilometers southeast of the 3 islands was Dragon Turtle Island. 2,500 kilometers south of the 3 islands was the First Archipelago, all of which were smaller than Black Horse Island. 400 kilometers south of the First Archipelago was the island inhabited by the light green gem dragon. It was newly named Midway Island and was about the size of Coral Island. 500 kilometers south of Midway Island was the Second Archipelago, 7 of which were larger than Black Horse Island. The largest was close to Coral Island and was named Whirlpool Island. From Black Horse Island directly to the Second Archipelago, there was a distance of about 4,000 kilometers. The Maelstrom was located 23 kilometers south of Whirlpool Island, so the location of the magic laboratory was located on a beach on Whirlpool Island. In order to study this Maelstrom, List even planned to build a small town on it, named Whirlpool Town. Then he would build a wizard tower and place the magic laboratory in the wizard tower. It is best to build small towns on all the islands along the way that can be anchored and supplied. Anyway, the more serfs we buy, the less trouble we have to migrate to reclaim the land. As long as the serfs in the supply town can support themselves, I don't need them to pay taxes. Usually, the sea trade of sea salt, white paper, and glass was a big business. Every year, there would be several opening orders, which were like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, and they would have to put real money into sacks. Therefore, List didn't care about the serfs' taxes. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't want to destroy the current social system, he really intended to eliminate all agricultural taxes. Of course, he didn't have to rely on taxes to eat, but other nobles still had to live by squeezing serfs, including his father. The Tulip family also needed to squeeze serfs. Let's build a small town on one of the 3 islands, Mangrove Town. Nami once managed the mangrove forest here. Let's build a small town on the Crescent Island of the first island, Crescent Town. Let's build a small town on the middle island, Greenlight Town. Let's build a small town on the Whirlpool Island. That's it. He added 4 towns to the map. This was the next step of his plan. However, he thought of a problem that he had not paid attention to before. I have been asking the exploration fleet to search for the islands, but it seems that I have forgotten to measure the distance between these islands and the mainland coastline. It should still be in the coastal area of the Eagle Kingdom, but most of the coastline should not have been developed yet. The living areas of humans on the legendary continent were mostly concentrated in open plains and freshwater areas where large rivers flowed. There were not many people in the mountains, virgin forests, and seaside. When Achi has time, I should let her set off from the second island and explore the mainland coastline to see the situation of the land there. Maybe in the future the second island can be developed, and we can directly raid the Eagle Kingdom from here and seize the resources. At least he could explore the mainland from this direction, and the wild virgin forests were rich and undeveloped treasures for him. After marking the map, List walked to the balcony. Looking at the distant sky, he was just about to recite a poem, but a chirping sound interrupted his thoughts. It was the 3 fire dragon birds, Goldie, Little Red, and Little Purple. They were circling around Ainfint's wormstalk, the phoenix parasol tree. After leaving the volcano, Ainfint finally planted the phoenix parasol tree near the Thorn Castle. The little fire dragon Leo would often sleep beside the phoenix parasol tree, and Ainfint would crazily touch Leo's scales and indulge in self-indulgence. Although this was a phenomenon of big elves evolving, List still felt strange. He always felt that Ainfint had a heavier taste than the big elf Ash who liked rope art. Suddenly, in the distance, another big elf flew over. It had a light green elite appearance, and there was a small sapling on its head with a red fruit on the sapling. This big elf stopped quietly in front of List and made a clear and melodious voice. "Chirp. List, is a Chi in the lab?" "Yes, Nami. Go find her yourself." "Thank you, List." "Chirp." Nami flew into the castle from the balcony and went to play with a Chi. Just a few days ago, Nami finally cheered up from her depression and quickly grew bigger, successfully evolving into a mangrove big elf. She became the 5th big elf in the territory after the giant kelp big elf Parker, the pea big elf Ash, the phoenix parasol big elf Ainfint, and the thorn big elf Ella. The 5 big elves surrounded List and won countless honors for him. However, the response was much smaller. When List's big elves were mentioned, all the subjects and nobles took it for granted. His Highness List is a dragon knight. Isn't it normal to have a few big elves? If the Fire Lord has a dragon elf, we can have a good chat. In fact, this was very unusual. But from the big nobles such as the Oxtail Marquis to the small street vendors, they all felt that it was normal. It had to be said that the light of the Dragon Knight identity was so strong that List couldn't make the headlines if he didn't do some dragon slaying. Wow! As soon as Nami flew into the aisle, she saw Ella, a big elf, patrolling the aisle with her hands on her hips. "Chirp, hello Ella." Ella glanced at Nami arrogantly and didn't want to pay attention to her. Nami magically took out a small bag of purple jade powder, which was Ella's favorite kind of jade powder. "Chirp, Ella. This is for you." Ella wanted to remain arrogant, but looking at the jade powder, she couldn't resist her inner desire. She took the jade powder, sniffed it, and hung it on her waist. When she looked at Nami again, she nodded gently. "I like purple jade powder, remember?" "Chirp, Nami remembers." "Well, give me purple jade powder next time." "Chirp." "Wow." For the sake of the purple jade powder, Ella reluctantly responded to Nami with a few words, then continued to put her hands on her waist and patrolled her territory. Chapter 805. When List arranged his idea of building a town and a mage tower, a Chi and other mages were almost ready for the experiment materials needed. The twins Lucy and Ruth, who were controlling the magic platform in the laboratory, received a signal from the Discovery. At first, the magic platform signal was very chaotic, and it was impossible to decipher what message was sent over there. But after half an hour, the signal became clear. The first message he received was from Captain Gurnier Barkskin Buckler. "Your Highness, the Discovery has crashed. 56 people were killed. 16 are missing, and 28 survived. We fell into the maelstrom, but rushed out of a cave in a mountain waterfall. We are surrounded by virgin forests, and there is a World of Warcraft event, so we can't go out to explore. We can only stick to the camp and wait for help. There are still people alive on the Discovery." When List received the news, he couldn't believe it. The maelstrom, which seemed to be a terrifying abyss, turned out to be a magic array that could be passed safely. However, one end of the magic array was a bit exciting. It turned out to be a cave in a mountain waterfall, which caused the Discovery to fall from a high altitude and killed more than half of the crew. Lucy, Reply to Gunal and tell them to wait patiently. I am cracking the Maelstrom channel and will go to rescue them at any time. Yes, Your Highness. Lucy quickly pressed the button of the magic compass and sent a message. Achi reminded, Brother, we should determine the coordinates of the discovery immediately. List nodded. Well, Lucy, ask Gunal where they are. After a while, the magic platform received a response. His Highness will not abandon us. The night's glory favors us. The sextant has been broken, and it is impossible to determine the specific location, but according to the calculations of the two mages, we should be. The other side sent a string of nautical coordinates. It was a rough location. Achi just glanced at the string of data and had already calculated. Brother, if the good coordinates are not wrong, their position is about 7 or 8,000 kilometers south of Black Horse Island. Using the Maelstrom as a coordinate, it is about 10 degrees south and west, nearly 4,000 kilometers away in a straight line. A teleportation magic array directly teleported the Discovery to 4,000 kilometers away. Jay Cho and Fei Yuqing had to sing 4 songs of 8,000 miles away to reach such a distance. If 1 kilometer was equal to 2 miles, they would need to sing 8 songs. Lucy, ask them if they have any adverse reactions. A moment later, the magic platform replied, There are no adverse reactions to their bodies, but some of the injured have yet to recover. Currently, the knights are circulating their battle chi well, and the magicians are able to cast spells freely. Their sleep is normal, their mental state is normal, and their consciousness is normal. Ask them if they saw the rocks, trees, and World of Warcraft that were thrown into the Maelstrom. Yes, but these things fell quite far away, and we were blocked by World of Warcraft, so we couldn't explore it. Ask them to describe the process of passing through the Great Whirlpool and describe the specific situation of the waterfall. After more than an hour of detailed questioning, List and Achi finally understood the situation of the Great Maelstrom teleportation array. It was indeed a safe teleportation channel. The only 2 dangers were that the whirlpool was extremely fast, and there was a risk of the boat breaking up. The second was that the moment the boat rushed out of the cave under the waterfall, it would be thrown high into the sky and then fall. As long as he could avoid these 2 dangers, the Great Maelstrom would be a safe and efficient teleportation array. Big Brother, we should send a batch of supplies and experimental materials to the survivors of the Discovery, including sextant and other equipment, and then let them cooperate with us over there. That's for sure. List nodded. But we might need Achi to personally go to the sea 7 or 8,000 kilometers away to see if there's an island there, or if it's a corner of the continent. Okay. The accidental contact with the Discovery turned the Great Maelstrom's research around a new peak. Although the research still needed to be followed up, it was no longer urgent. This was especially true for List, who was completely focused on the other side of the Great Maelstrom. According to Gurnier's description, it was a vast primeval forest, which meant that they were either on a large island or in a corner of the continent. In short, with a teleportation array like the Great Maelstrom, it was enough to offset the thousands of kilometers of voyage, so the development value was very high. The communication was still ongoing. Every hour, Gurnier would report on their situation. Achi had already set off for the unknown sea, while List began to arrange the supplies, preparing to throw them through the Great Maelstrom to the Discovery. All the supplies must be wrapped in rubber leaves, lined with cotton and hemp, and finally tied up with hemp rope. While instructing Isaiah, the administrative officer of Kelp City, to gather the supplies, List carefully reminded. Also, the ship must be constantly reinforced. Don't be afraid of wasting materials. It's best to apply rubber water several times to ensure that the ship can withstand a huge impact, even a fall from a high altitude. Now that he was a baron, Isaiah had become more stable and capable. Please rest assured, Your Highness, Isaiah will strictly pack the supplies, reinforce the ship, and ensure that the possibility of damage is minimized at every stage. After arranging the tasks, the sky was already dark. List stood on the balcony, looking at the starry sky, waiting for the good news Achi would bring him. He was not worried about Achi's safety. Achi had already become a magic shooter, perfectly mastering water magic, and was proficient in ice magic. Her strength was enough to dominate the sea. Moreover, Achi could swim at a speed close to the speed of sound, which was more than 1,200 kilometers per hour. It was impossible for any creature to catch up with Achi in the sea, even if it was a water dragon. In fact, whether water dragons lived in the sea or not was just speculation. There were records of water dragons found in a large swamp on the mainland, far away from the sea. Black Horse Island was 7 or 8,000 kilometers away from the discovery. It would take Achi more than half a day to swim back and forth at full speed. However, Achi brought a magic platform with her. Before dawn the next day, Ruth, who was on night duty, was led by a servant to knock on List's bedroom door. "Your Highness, Teacher Achilles' Ides sent a message. She has arrived at the coordinates of the discovery and found several huge islands, the largest of which is several times larger than Iron Hoof Island." Several times larger than Iron Hoof Island? List immediately got up, walked to the magic laboratory in his pajamas, and communicated with Achi. Achi introduced her findings. Because she could not locate the specific location of the discovery, she deliberately explored the nearby waters and had already explored more than 10 islands. The largest was several times larger than Iron Hoof Island, even larger than Blue Dragon Island. In addition, there were several large islands close to Iron Hoof Island. All right. Chapter 806. Achi returned to Black Horse Island with the discovery of the super-large archipelago. List was excited for a whole day. An island several times larger than Iron Hoof Island, even larger than Blue Dragon Island, could fully carry the weight of a country. Coupled with the surrounding large islands, this was simply a good location for the Country of Fire. According to Achi, the distance between the islands was very narrow, so the sailing time between each island would be greatly shortened, making it more suitable for habitation and development. The only drawback was that the archipelago was too far away from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. According to Achi's accurate remeasurement, it was 7,000 kilometers away. Even if the Great Maelstrom Magic Transmission Array was opened in the future and ships could be navigated, it would only shorten the distance by more than 3,000 kilometers. Moreover, the Great Maelstrom Magic Transmission Array seemed to be a one-way transmission array. A round trip between the two countries would take at least 11,000 kilometers. With the current speed of the Palace sailing ship at 10 knots, it would take more than 50 days. If it was an ordinary sailing ship at 3 knots, it would take at least half a year. It was really troublesome to move the territory's industries. List did not have to worry about himself. He and Achi could sail the Flame at any time. At a speed of 500 kilometers per hour, 10,000 kilometers would only take 20 hours. Plus the rest time, it would be easy to go back and forth every 2 days. However, he could not use the Flame to help with the migration of the territory. The Flame would have to sail back and forth for several months to move all the industries. Maybe I can let the Thunder Tortoise act as a porter? The speed of the Thunder Tortoise was not fast, but it was much faster than the speed of the Palace sailing ship. The ordinary Dragon Tortoise on Dragon Turtle Island was not slow either. Once tamed, it would be nice to pull a ship. Unfortunately, the difficulty of taming a Dragon Tortoise to pull a ship was probably not much less than the difficulty of developing a steamship. In any case, despite the remote location and the difficulty of navigation, the discovery of the new archipelago was still great news. From now on, List could start preparing to move the territory and develop the new archipelago to prepare for the establishment of a country. Should I establish a Grand Duchy first, or should I go directly to the kingdom? My old friend, the invisible dragon, hasn't come yet, so I'm not sure. What a happy worry. List withdrew his unreliable divergent thoughts and finally fixed his eyes on the magic teleportation array. What I should do is to support Achi in deciphering the magic teleportation array and strive to master the manufacturing method of the teleportation array so that we can directly build a teleportation array on Black Horse Island. The whirlpool on the sea could send the discovery 4,000 kilometers away. This was the most efficient form of transportation. Once the magical teleportation circle was developed, List would be able to realize his dream of ruling the seas around the legendary continent. Then, he would treat the legendary continent as his breeding ground and slowly hunt for prey. That was a good idea. However, the study of the teleportation magic array was not a simple matter. Looking at the great maelstrom's torrential weather, it was easy to understand that the teleportation formation was definitely not a simple door that could teleport someone to another door after pushing it open. Or perhaps it was a metal formation plate that could teleport someone thousands of miles away just by standing on it and waiting. However, no matter how difficult it was, Liszt had to study the teleportation magic array. This kind of magic was the cornerstone of his dreams. Give me the teleportation magic array. I have the confidence to change this world. Once upon a time, his dream was very simple. He wanted to eat his fill, ride a dragon, and live a carefree life. Later, when he rode a dragon, his dream became to shelter a country, inherit his bloodline, and then explore the wonderful world. Now, his dream has expanded again. Exploring the world is no longer difficult. Changing the world is the challenge. Contract the fairy dragon and become the eternal dragon lord. Open the teleportation magic array, collect all kinds of dragons, and rule the legendary continent. Integrate magic and Do-Chi, and create a new era of technology and magic. Then, learn about this planet and then go to the moon to have a look. If possible, I might be able to go on an interstellar trip. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. After a fierce fantasy, he slowly gathered his thoughts, put aside these grandiose ideas, and returned to reality. Although opportunities continued to come one after another, it was undeniable that his current foundation was still very shallow, and it was very difficult to support 2 dragons. He still needed to work hard and move in the direction of building a country. The news of the discovery of the archipelago was temporarily blocked by Liszt. He did not want to expose his trump card before things were clear. At least, he had not taken advantage of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire yet. He had risked the danger of being slain to save the Sapphire family. If he did not scrape off a layer of the Sapphire family's skin, he would suffer a big loss. In short, he wanted money, materials, and technology from the Sapphire Grand Duke. Under his constant urging, the territory received technical support from the shipyard. Finally, a brand new 3-masted cargo ship was launched. After sailing tests, it had met the requirements of various standards. After the new ship was launched and returned, Liszt heavily rewarded all the shipwrights in the shipyard. He personally named the cargo ship Expedition, which meant that the trade of the Flame Territory would be carried out on expeditions to the major seas. It also meant that the prelude to the Great Voyage era was about to be started by him. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire had started the Great Voyage era, but it was still limited to a small area. Liszt's ambition could not be stopped even by the Devil's Sea. Traversing the 4 seas around the legendary continent, and then advancing to the Devil's Sea, from green water to blue water, this was the Great Voyage era. After the celebration of the launch of the new ship, Liszt rode on the back of the Chocobo Loki and leisurely called out the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, Heart Island's abnormality. Finally completed the mission. I should go to the Heart Island to investigate again. He suddenly felt a little tired. I have to go with Chi. I feel that ever since Chi became a magic shooter, I can't do anything without her. Other than the fact that she might be more quick-witted than I am, it is more because of her invincible speed in the sea. It saves time and improves efficiency. Without Chi, Liszt did not know how long it would take for him to explore the sea. His country would be even more distant. Fortunately, he had Chi. Although he had trained Chi to be a little less like a naive little siren, the intimacy between the two grew day by day. The corners of his mouth curled up. Liszt used his hand to tidy up the pale blonde hair on his forehead that was blown by the wind. The 19-year-old boy's face was still a little immature, but his temperament was extremely noble. A red cloak, silver armor, and a colorful mount. He was the most dazzling light on Black Horse Island. Wherever he passed, whether it was an official, a knight, or a working commoner and serf, they all showed a sincere expression of admiration, bowed their heads and saluted respectfully. He was used to this and was not touched. He was just concerned about the new smoke mission. Chapter 807. This chapter is Radish Gung 01. The reward for mining a light emerald mine is actually a broken jade? There was jade in this world, a kind of jade with a dark green color. Many elves like to eat the jade powder of jade. But a broken jade was obviously not enough to be a reward for a smoke mission. Even if smoke missions sometimes rewarded resources that were about to be obtained, it was not so cheap. So the broken jade is not ordinary jade. It's very likely. List's heart suddenly pounded. He wanted to suppress it but couldn't suppress the wild thoughts in his mind. It's very likely. A clue related to the Emerald Dragon. The Emerald Dragon, one of the 5 sacred dragons, represented the power of dreams. It was said that it could sneak into the dreams of any creature. List firmly believed in this, so the Emerald Dragon must be real. He had fantasized more than once about the different abilities of the sacred dragons. The invisible dragon was similar to a special gem dragon that could produce space gems. The smoke dragon controlled the power of fate and could change fate at any time. The fairy dragon probably had an eternal lifespan, and the dusk dragon had the ability to change time. As for the emerald dragon's ability, List had thought about it a lot. There were roughly 2 directions to speculate. One was the dream world, which connected the dreams of all creatures. Just like the dream jade guarded by the green dragons in World of Warcraft, it was a reflection of the real world. The other was the power of the mind, which controlled the thoughts of creatures by entering dreams. Just like the legendary nightmare, it could trap people in nightmares and make them unable to struggle out. Broken Jade, Heart Island, Mind Fruit Tree, Mystical Dragon Mind Fruit. List rode the chocobo Loki, calculating with his fingers like a fortune teller. I should have thought of it long ago. Even space gems can't stop such an incredible plant like the Mind Fruit Tree. It must have an extraordinary origin. The magic power of dragons had extreme properties and belonged to the unique class of supreme magic. Then ordinary items absolutely couldn't break the dominance of supreme magic. Only supreme magic of the same level could restrain each other. The Mind Fruit Tree was obviously a supreme magic product of the same level as space gems. The broken jade should refer to the remains of the Emerald Dragon. The Mind Fruit Tree grew on its remains, and the Mind Fruit Tree condensed the mystical dragon Mind Fruit. Because it has the powerful spiritual power of the Emerald Dragon, the mystical dragon Mind Fruit can bind the dragon's mind. Judging from the current clues, this was the most reasonable speculation. By the time List had finished thinking, he had already returned to Thorn's stronghold and found Achi, who was drawing a nautical chart. Achi, stop what you're doing and come with me to the Mind Island. Big brother, are you in a hurry to mine the Heart Island's gem mine? Achi was a little reluctant to leave. She had already been enchanted by the teleportation magic array. It's very urgent, because there might be clues about another dragon hidden on the Mind Island. Achi also liked dragons. After hearing the clues about dragons, she immediately put down the work in her hands. Is there a new dragon? That's great. Big brother can ride a new dragon again. Mages couldn't ride dragons, but everyone loved dragons. Moreover, dragons were excellent research materials for Achi. Back then, the dying emerald dragon Ethan had provided her with a lot of information to pry into the mysteries of magic. Until now, she would still ask List to lend Leo to her for research from time to time. On the way, Achi asked, Big brother, what kind of dragon is it? It's an emerald dragon. The emerald dragon that represents the dreamland. Achi wasn't too surprised because she already knew about the invisible dragon and was mentally prepared for the holy dragon. It might just be the remains of the emerald dragon. Remains? Yes, even dragons can die, but I don't know why they didn't die in the legendary Valley of Dragons, but in this aquamarine sea. List was really curious about what happened to these powerful dragons. First, the smoke dragon was suspected to be dead, and its power was attached to him. Then, he encountered the suspected young invisible dragon, but he didn't know if it was resurrected. Then, the little fire dragon, Leo, was born from the remains of the fire dragon. Now, there was the suspected remains of the emerald dragon. There were a total of 4 dragons in the aquamarine sea, including 3 holy dragons and 1 elemental dragon. There were really too many unknown secrets that puzzled people, so much so that List even wondered if the Aquamarine Sea was the legendary Valley of Dragons. But he felt that it was impossible. However, the fire dragon had died at least thousands of years ago. Even the dragon bones, which were almost indestructible, had decayed into mortal bones. In a trance, they had arrived at the Heart Island. Seeing the Heart Island from afar, List understood what was called the abnormality of the Heart Island. A layer of light green misty light appeared on the island. This was clearly the mist formed by the power of the light emerald mine and the free magic power in the air. The Sapphire Grand Duke had said to List that the gem mine would sometimes form a gem mist under special weather. I must mine it as soon as possible to prevent the Heart Island from being discovered by others. Such an abnormality could be seen from a distance, and it was extremely easy to be exposed. After a while, he landed on the Heart Island. List immediately took out the bone shovel and began to dig the place where the heart fruit tree had previously grown. After digging through a meter of soil layer, he gradually found that it was a rock layer. He chiseled the rock hard and found that the rock was wrapped in a visible light green crystal with clusters of light green light flickering. Looking closely, he could also see that there were fist-sized light emeralds inside some of the crystal stones. These raw stones had to be given to the crystal craftsman to slowly cut open so that the gemstones could be extracted without damaging the overall structure of the crystal. List just put the raw stones into the space ring and continued to dig. After digging through a 3-meter thick rock layer and digging out dozens of light green raw stones, he still did not find the broken jade that he had expected. However, he was not in a hurry. Although the Heart Island was the size of a palm, it was at least dozens of meters above sea level. The broken jade could be hidden in the rock layer that was dozens of meters thick. He dug from day to night, and after a short nap, he continued to dig from 3 meters to 10 meters. Even with the strong physique of the Dragon Knight, he was still very tired. More than a dozen bone shovels and bone chisels made of fire dragon bones were broken. Finally, on the afternoon of the third day, he dug through the raw stone distribution layer of the light emerald mine. Then he pried open the layers of jade-like green shale and wiped off the gravel powder. Finally, there was a vivid and beautiful green underneath. They were both emerald green, but the emerald green of the shale was only jade grade, while this green was indescribably green. Chapter 808. This chapter is 100,000 years of salted fish. Digging, and smashing with the bone chisel, it was extremely difficult to excavate broken jade from the rock layer more than 10 meters below. It was necessary to constantly pry open the upper layer of rock and dig a large area. If List wasn't a Dragon Knight, he wouldn't have been able to do it within a month or two. However, long-term practice of dragon combat made his physique very strong. Dragon breath tempered the body all the time. His strength was so great that he could kill a World of Warcraft with a single punch. Of course, the reason why he could excavate violently was that he found that the broken jade was terrifyingly hard. The bone chisel didn't even leave a trace on it. So he continued to chisel away layers of emerald green shale jade, revealing more and more jade. He worked continuously for a day. Finally, all the broken pieces of jade were unearthed. When the full appearance of the jade was revealed, List and Achi suddenly realized that it was a lifelike thigh, the hind leg of a dragon. It was an exquisite and magnificent dragon's hind leg carved out of jade, including the dragon claws and dragon scales, which were all exquisite and delicate. At the root of the dragon's hind leg, there was a large piece of dragon meat with a smooth incision at one end. It was as if it was directly cut in half by a sharp weapon. The dragon's hind leg was cut off. It was probably the dragon's hind leg of the emerald dragon. From the cross-section of the incision, it could be seen that there were emerald green traces of varying depths inside, which might represent dragon bones, dragon flesh, dragon blood vessels, dragon skin, and other tissues. List and Achi looked at each other. So, the cut marks on this emerald dragon's hind leg are likely to indicate that it died a violent death? Achi was very puzzled. But what weapon can cut open the body of a holy dragon? Brother has tested the hardness of the emerald dragon's remains, and it is very difficult to cause damage. It should have been stronger when it was alive, and it is even more impossible for it to suffer such a powerful injury. It's really strange. Not only was it strange, but it was also very frightening. The Holy Dragon, the legendary Holy Dragon, a broken limb was buried here. No one knew how many years had passed, but it was still lifelike. The clear cut clearly showed how sharp the weapon that chopped off its leg was, and how powerful the owner of the weapon was. He cast Magic Eye. List observed the Emerald Dragon's hind leg from another angle. According to the size of the dragon's hind leg, it could basically be inferred that the Emerald Dragon was about 45 meters long when it was alive, and its wingspan was about 40 to 50 meters. Basically, it was the size of a light Emerald Dragon. The magic power on its hind legs wasn't colorful, but chaotic. However, judging from its energy level, it was definitely supreme magic. It was contained in every inch of the hind leg, and there was no trace of it leaking outwards. The magic power did not dissipate in the slightest, so it's hard to tell when it was chopped to death in the aquamarine sea. It should have been chopped to death. Its entire hind leg was chopped off, so it should not have survived. Then where did the rest of its corpse fall? Is it in the aquamarine sea? Countless thoughts lingered in List's mind. One of the biggest thoughts was the one that made him feel horrified. Who exactly killed the Emerald Dragon? Even the wreckage of the Fire Dragon on Black Horse Island may have fallen in the same battle. The adult Fire Dragon was also killed by the person who killed the Emerald Dragon. Of course, it was not necessarily done by humans, but it must be a highly intelligent creature to be able to make weapons. No, Achi, look at this incision. It's really smooth and flat, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done by a weapon. If it was the sharp claws of some creature, it may also cause such an incision, but to cut such a thick hind leg so smoothly, the claws of this creature are at least 20 meters long. How big is its body? The adult fire dragon's body length and wingspan could reach 100 meters, but its claws were at most 3 or 4 meters long. With claws of 20 meters long, wouldn't the creature's body be 600 or 700 meters long? Brother, maybe that creature's claws are particularly long, Achi advised. It's possible. Forget it, it's useless to think too much. Let's take this Emerald Dragon's hind leg away first. It won't be too late to study it later. Then I'm going to organize a group of loyal knights to come in mine. By the way, I'm going to turn over the Heart Island completely to see if there are other remains of the Emerald Dragon. That night, Achi and List transported the Emerald Dragon's hind leg away. It was placed in the cabin of the new ship, the Flame No. 2, which was reserved for sailing trips. Then, the Flame No. 2 was anchored at the end of the sea canal below the Thorn Castle and kept in strict custody. Then, List quickly organized a group of Earth Knight to go to the Heart Island to dig the light emerald mine. These Knight had signed an agreement that after mining, they would take their families to settle on the new island as the first batch of new forces to develop the Flame Islands. That is, the newly discovered founding islands. When they finished mining, they would not return to Black Horse Island. However, these Knight could be promoted from a civilian to a Lord Knight. When they set foot on the Flame Islands and built their first city, they could also be promoted to a Baron. After finishing the selection of Knight, List took the time to look at the smoke mission. Mission completed. The reward is the remains of the Emerald Dragon's hind leg. The light emerald mine was only the beginning, but the mission was already completed. It seemed that it was not mandatory to finish mining the ore. Mission: the Great Maelstrom has been verified to be a teleportation array. It is unknown whether it is the work of nature or the work of ancient magicians. However, it is of utmost importance to study it and make use of it. Please pass through the Great Maelstrom once. Reward: a profound understanding of the magic transmission array. I wanted to wait a little longer, but now it seems that the danger of the Maelstrom should not be too great. I can cross it directly. With the strength of my Dragon Knight, it should be easy to cross the Maelstrom. Of course, it is best to send a Sky Knight to try to cross it once on a big ship. Therefore, he quickly gathered several Sky Knights and told them about the plan to cross the Maelstrom. He selectively told them that the Maelstrom was dangerous, but many Earth Knights, magicians, and even several trainee Night Sailors survived the crossing. The Sky Knight's survival pressure was not great. The choice is up to you. Now, except for Duarte, who is an Earl, the others are Viscounts. I will not be stingy with the rewards. The battle achievements of crossing the Maelstrom will be determined according to the battle achievements of Viscounts to be promoted to Earl. List casually threw out an Earl title. Anyway, the Flame Archipelago was large, and he did not care about giving out a little land. He was actually more worried that there were no nobles to develop the wasteland for him. Therefore, he was eager to promote the Knight's title and mobilize the enthusiasm of his followers. The bait was thrown out. It could be promoted, but the danger could not be said to be too great. The Sky Knights struggled for a while, and finally, Klaus Buckthorn seized the opportunity. He was one of the 9 Sky Knights who surrendered in the Battle of the Sea. As an ordinary Sky Knight, his strength had already vaguely stepped into the level of a sword saint. He was only short of success and a title. Chapter 809. This chapter is a reward for book friend 160723102712661. He first sent the Earth Knights to the Heart Island to mine, then sent Cross Buckthorn to the Great Maelstrom. Accompanying him was a ketch that had been meticulously reinforced. There was a highly precise sextant, magic platform, and other equipment on the ship for positioning purposes. After arriving at the Great Maelstrom, Achi directly pushed the ketch into the Great Maelstrom. Cross hugged the mainmast as he stared nervously at the whirlpool well in the center of the Great Maelstrom. The ketch was surrounded by densely packed crystal searchlights to illuminate the surroundings. List rode the little fire dragon Leo as he circled above the whirlpool well. He aimed a pair of specially made binoculars at the inside of the well, waiting for the ketch to enter and illuminate the well, hoping to discover some new secrets. The ketch kept circling in the whirlpool, speeding up as it approached the center of the whirlpool. Achi stepped on a shell and was lifted up by the waterspout at the edge of the Great Maelstrom. The waterspout could not go deeper into the whirlpool as the turbulent water and chaotic magic could easily mince the waterspout. He activated the Eye of Magic and observed the changes in the Great Maelstrom. About half an hour later, the ketch finally fell into the whirlpool well in the center of the Great Maelstrom. List carefully used the binoculars to stare at the deep well. He saw that the ketch's crystal searchlights were indeed illuminating the inside of the well, but the inner wall was still just a high-speed flow of water. Until the next moment, the ketch suddenly passed through a hazy mist, and then the ketch quickly disappeared into the mist, the lights extinguished. The Great Maelstrom returned to its usual calm state. It was as if nothing had happened. List put away the binoculars and steered Leo back to the deck of the Flame. Achi followed behind and quickly entered the cabin. In the cabin, Kenley and a few other great magicians were anxiously guarding the magic platform and continuously communicating with Captain Gunnier Bark Roundshield. "Report the results of the communication," List walked in and directly ordered. Kenley personally controlled the magic platform and replied without raising her head. "The Discovery's magic platform is reporting that everything is normal. No new ship has appeared." 10 minutes later, new information finally came from the magic platform. "Your Highness, we discovered a ship flying out of the cave under the waterfall and landed in the forest not far away. A Sky Knight is flying towards us. It should be Viscount Claus." A few minutes later, the magic platform continued to report, "It's indeed Viscount Claus. Viscount Claus' body is in good condition, and he said that the trip to the Great Maelstrom this time was smooth. After entering the Great Maelstrom, the light from the crystal searchlight was extinguished, but there were countless traces of light that resembled spiderwebs or lightning in the surroundings. Explain in detail." Viscount Claus hugged the mast and couldn't move, but he felt the ship being enveloped by a huge force and thrown out. After about 5 minutes, it finally passed through the dense lightning spiderwebs and appeared at the entrance of the waterfall cave. The light of the crystal searchlight was restored. "It means the feeling of passing through the Great Maelstrom. My body feels fine, and there are no abnormalities. However, Viscount Claus remembers that he didn't breathe during the transmigration process. Perhaps even his heart didn't beat. It was as though everything was paused. Only the ship was enveloped by some kind of power and flew along the winding sea route. It was flying and not sailing, which meant that there was actually no water in the passage. The waterfall was normal, but the ship was flying. This meant that although the passage was in the waterfall cave, it had nothing to do with the waterfall. After asking all the questions, List gestured for Kenley to send a message. "Prepare to welcome me. I will personally pass through the Great Maelstrom and head to your location." "Your Highness, it's very dangerous to pass through the Great Maelstrom without more experimental data. Your safety is not something that anyone can compare to," Kenley advised. Her magical research career in the Fire Territory was very good, and she didn't want it to be affected by List's accident. Achi did not say anything and only shot him a worried gaze. Everything was said without words. List smiled and responded with a reassuring gaze. He then said in a carefree manner, "I've already made up my mind. There's no need to delay this trip. It's just a teleportation formation. As a son of glory and a knight, there's nothing to fear." Actually, it was the power of fate that gave him great confidence. The smoke mission allowed him to pass through, which meant that the power of fate had long enveloped the teleportation formation. In short, it could be arranged. Achi stood at the edge of the Great Maelstrom. List leaped onto Leo's Dragon Tooth platform and waved at Achi. The next moment, he quickly activated Dragon Knight Resonance and entered Dragon Knight mode. Then, he operated the Dragon Eye orbit, allowing the magic structure of the world to clearly appear in his vision. Roar! Leo let out an excited roar. His mind was in sync with List's, and his inner world was also filled with the courage and passion for adventure. He flapped his wings and flew, his dragon warrior aura running as one. Cutting through the sky above the sea, he flew straight to the center of the distant Great Maelstrom. Looking at the pitch-black Great Maelstrom, List couldn't help but shout for himself and Leo, "Forward, Leo! Let's conquer the Great Maelstrom together." Roar! Leo closed his wings and plunged into the Great Maelstrom. At first, the Great Maelstrom was just an ordinary Great Maelstrom with water, roars, and falling gravity. In the Dragon Eye orbit were countless messy yet orderly magic lines, outlining every part of the structure of the Great Maelstrom. However, after a second of falling, his eyes suddenly lit up. Then, his and Leo's figures sank into the hazy water vapor of the Great Maelstrom. Or rather, he had left the Great Maelstrom on the sea and entered another unknown space. A powerful stagnant force instantly enveloped him and Leo, making it difficult for him to move. But just like Crosby Buckthorn and the others, he and Leo could barely move. But there was also a huge repulsive force, which was the throwing force that Claus had mentioned, pushing him and Leo forward, making it impossible for them to stop in this space. After the Dragon Eye orbit adapted to the strong light, it could gradually see the magic structure inside the space. The densely packed threads outlined a wormhole-like space. The magic here did not belong to any of the attributes of water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, ice, or darkness. But it gave List a familiar feeling. Is this the magic that represents spatial power? His mind was clear, and the dragon warrior aura in his body was operating normally. I use the space gem left behind by the invisible dragon every day. It gives me this feeling, a hard and ethereal feeling of nothingness and reality. Suddenly, he found that behind the spatial magic there was a huge net. This net only revealed the tip of the iceberg, and the rest was hidden in the depths of the unknown space. But List quickly sensed that this net was the source of Achi's magic. The magic net. The Great Maelstrom opened the magic transmission array, and the wormhole space outlined by it seemed to have pierced a hole in the magic net, and then threaded a tube through it, trying its best to maintain the magic net's pressure on the wormhole space. The magic net seemed to want to devour the wormhole space, and the spatial magic power maintained the wormhole space. Movement and stillness reached a very rhythmic balance. Rumble. Before List could continue observing, his vision suddenly changed. He had already rushed out of the wormhole space and arrived inside a mountain. Above him was a roaring waterfall, and below him was a rock cliff. Or rather, he had actually flown out of the wormhole space upside down. Maneuver. Turn around. Flap my wings, and fly. Humans and dragons were connected, and Leo quickly twisted his body to maintain his balance. When the repulsive force behind him disappeared, Leo suddenly flapped his wings and flew again. Everything he saw. This was a brand new world, with endless wild forests, moist air filled with a primitive aura, and the towering mountain behind him that was 1,000 meters tall. Flame Archipelago. Future Nation. Chapter 8:10. This island was indeed infinitely huge. List rode Leo thousands of meters into the sky, but he still could not see the borders of the island. It was as if the forest was endless, and the land had no boundaries. The bigger, the better. List was in a good mood and could not help but want to sing. However, he did not sing in the end because he could not find a suitable song. Thus, he plunged into the forest. Soon, he found the crash site of the Discovery and the new sailboat. It was very obvious in the forest, and a large number of trees were smashed down, leaving behind large pieces of wreckage. When the fire dragon was about to hit the ground, Leo suddenly spread his wings. He stirred up air currents and stabilized his body. He steadily hovered less than a few meters from the ground and slowly landed. He let out an excited roar. Roar! Traversing the great whirlpool this time was a novel experience for him. Touching Leo's scales, List flipped over and jumped down. At this moment, Cross Buckthorn, Gunnier Bark Round Shield, and the others rushed over. They all bowed to List. "Your Highness!" List nodded at Cross. "Very good, Cross. You've shown me your bravery. From today onwards, I'll promote you to Earl. As for your fief and title, we'll discuss it after the nation is established." "Thank you for the honor, Your Highness. Cross is willing to charge forward for Your Highness." Cross knelt on one knee. List pulled out the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword and tapped on his shoulders twice with the tip of the sword, completing the simple conferment ceremony. But to Cross, this was not a simple conferment. It was a crucial step for him to go from a small noble to a major noble. From now on, what he needed to do was to strengthen the Buckthorn family. He ignored Cross's excitement. List then looked at Gunnier. "Captain Gunnier, your performance has impressed me. Although you fell into the great whirlpool due to carelessness and most of the crew died, there are always dangers on a voyage. The fact that you were able to discover the great whirlpool and come to this island is the guidance of the knight's glory." Gunnier knelt on the ground, feeling inexplicably excited. List smiled and said directly, "From today onwards, I will promote you to a viscount. The fief and title will be discussed after the founding of the country. Thank you, Your Highness, for the honor bestowed upon me. I, Unal, pledge my life to Your Highness, and charge into battle for Your Highness." List looked at the remaining crew members of the Discovery. Apart from Captain Gurnier, Glanny, and the other two magicians, there were 25 other people. Among them, there were 7 Earth Knight who had been conferred the title of Lord Knight after the last battle at the sea. There were 13 Knight who did not have a title and 5 civilian sailors. Fellow Knight, you've contributed to the discovery of the Great Maelstrom and the new island. A Lord Knight will be promoted to a Baron. A Knight without a title and a civilian sailor will be conferred the title of a Lord Knight. The conferment order was issued. More than 20 Knight and sailors all knelt on the ground, excitedly expressing their determination to charge for Sir Lord. Then, List's gaze fell on the 2 magicians. He only knew one of them, Glanny Truth. This was the first magician he had interacted with. Although he was a little stubborn, his skills in making magical equipment were very strong. He had contributed a lot to the restoration of the Discovery's magic foundation. As for the rewards for both of you, it will be discussed and decided by the Guild of Magic in the future. The Guild of Magic's management of the magicians was the authority he had given to Achi, Chris, Kenley, and the others. Therefore, he was too embarrassed to directly reward them. He let Glanny and the other magician continue to control the magic foundation and maintain contact with the flame near the Great Maelstrom. List did not stay in the simple camp for long. He ordered everyone to quickly use the sextant to determine the position, and he rode Leo back to the mountain with the waterfall. It was a lonely mountain. Although it was shrouded in lush trees, one could vaguely tell from its appearance that it was a broken mountain range. The broken side formed a cliff that was not too steep. The large waterfall rushed down from this cliff. The source of the waterfall was near the top of the mountain. It was a pitch-black cave. The mouth of the cave was wide, at least 100 meters wide. List quickly flew near the mouth of the cave. His dragon eye orbit constantly sized up the cave, but he did not see any complicated magic lines. It seemed to be just ordinary mountains and rivers. He and Leo carefully flew into the cave, already prepared to rush into the teleportation magic matrix again. However, after flying almost 50 meters in, they still did not hit the teleportation magic matrix. Something's wrong. After I rushed out of the wormhole, I felt that I was near the mouth of the cave. Can't be 50 meters deep. Could it be that the wormhole is in another space and cannot be reached from the cave? Seeing that they had reached the narrowest part of the cave and could no longer enter, List could only make such a guess. He then returned the way he came. He let Leo stop on a huge protruding rock by the side of the waterfall. He looked at the huge flowing water and kept thinking about the entire Great Maelstrom teleportation magic matrix. Unknowingly, a smoke serpentine appeared before his eyes. Mission completed. Reward: a deeper understanding of the teleportation magic matrix. Mission completed. Then the smoke changed, forming a new smoke serpentine. Mission: in the Flame Archipelago, a new country will rise from here. As the future monarch, you need to have a clear understanding of the Flame Archipelago. Why not map the approximate island distribution and sea area of the Flame Archipelago for overall planning? Reward: an old friend lost. Without a doubt. At this time, List already had a deep understanding of the teleportation magic matrix. However, he was still confused about the theoretical basis and the operating principle of magic power. He could only wait for a Chi to arrive, then communicate all his findings with her and use her to study it. After coming back to his senses, he looked at the new smoke mission. Mapping the Flame Archipelago, this was the meaning of the title. However, the reward made him happy. Sure enough, when I miss my old friend will naturally be driven by fate to come closer. But this year's mission reward is no longer old friend wandering, but old friend lost. Could it be that the invisible dragon is lost? After thinking about it carefully, it was really possible. The 2 times he came into contact with the invisible dragon, it was attracted by the smell of smoke grass. The second time, the invisible dragon wandered for a long time before coming to Black Horse Island. This showed that it knew that there was smoke grass here, but it forgot where Flower Town was. In the end, it was only after List set up the dishes and served them that it came late. Maybe this guy has no sense of direction. However, my old friend has the power to represent space. Could it be related to the teleportation magic matrix? There were too few clues to judge. However, there was no hurry. He could slowly map the Flame Archipelago. Sooner or later, his old friend would be led by the nose by the power of fate and fly to him. He stretched his body, feeling the surging power in his body, and was full of expectations for the future. Chapter 8:11. They left the waterfall cave. When List rode Leo, he had already thought of the name of this mountain, Vortex Cave in Vortex Mountain, and Vortex Waterfall outside the Vortex Cave. Below the waterfall was a whirlpool, and the water from the whirlpool flowed into a whirlpool stream. The stream grew into a whirlpool river. List searched along the whirlpool river from the air and finally found a flat valley. He named it Tinder Plains. Tinder Plains was only 1 kilometer away from where Discovery had crashed. Claus, Gunal, from now on, move your camp immediately and build a new base in Tinder Plains. From now on, we'll use Tinder Plains as our base and slowly explore this unknown land. Soon, once the magic teleportation array becomes the main transportation route, this place will soon become a new city. Liszt had also thought of a name for the city, Tinder City. This was the starting point of the Nation of Fire, where the first flame rose. There was firewood everywhere, and once a fire was ignited, it was destined to be unextinguished. As you wish, Your Highness. Claus Seabuckthorn immediately led the team and started cutting down trees to open a path to Tinder Plains. With the fire dragon's dragon aura, all the World of Warcraft monsters were scared away. There shouldn't be any threats within a 10-kilometer radius for a while, so they could work in peace. However, after a while, Liszt felt that their efficiency was too low. Get out of the way! After ordering everyone to retreat, he used the Dragonheart code to communicate with Leo, who was basking in the sun. Come here and spit fire to open a path. Potions. Leo raised his eyelids and started extorting. It seemed that he had to get rid of his evil thoughts again. Liszt reluctantly agreed to Leo's extortion, so the little fire dragon immediately got up from Dosen and spit dragon breath according to Liszt's instructions. The dragon breath was more than 3,000 degrees, and it directly vaporized the trees. When it flew past the forest, a scorched road about 7 meters wide was immediately exposed. Then, it burned the entire Tinder Plains with dragon breath to make it easier to build a camp here. Of course, Liszt had used the Dragon Eye Trail to investigate before. There were no potions or elves in this area. He didn't feel bad about burning them down, and he wasn't afraid of forest fires either. Wherever Leo went, he would absorb all the flames into his body. None of the flames could spread under his control. Fire dragons represented the power of fire, and controlling flames was an innate talent. Just as he finished the construction of the camp, Glanny, who was controlling the magic platform, reported, Your Highness, the Great Achilles Ides is preparing to personally pass through the Great Maelstrom Teleportation Array. I understand. Tell her not to worry about crossing over. I'll be waiting for her at the entrance of the vortex. The Great Maelstrom posed a great threat to ordinary people, but it wasn't too much of a threat to the strong. Basically, they wouldn't die as long as they didn't get strangled by the maelstrom or fall to their deaths. As long as a chi activated the water wave shield, it would be equivalent to activating the unbreakable diamond body. She would definitely not fall to her death. As for being strangled by the whirlpool, that was even more impossible. She was a spirit of the sea and was born with the ability to control water. So after all the preparations were done, the magic platform quickly sent a message. A chi had already stepped on the shell and rushed towards the great maelstrom. After waiting for a quarter of an hour, Liszt suddenly saw a cocoon-shaped ball of light flashing out from the entrance of the vortex. In the vision of the dragon's eye, traces of the magic net appeared out of thin air, as well as a crack on the magic net. That was the place where the teleportation array was torn on the magic net. Just as he was about to rush over to catch the cocoon-shaped ball of light and hug a chi, the water of the waterfall suddenly rose into a waterspout, surrounding the cocoon-shaped ball of light. The water stretched taut, and the cocoon-shaped ball of light was forcibly pulled back from the entrance of the hole. Then, the cocoon-shaped ball of light dissipated. A chi stood steadily on the shell, and the shell floated steadily on the waterspout. A happy smile appeared on the cute face of the little siren. Brother, a chi has successfully crossed the teleportation array. Oh, very good. Liszt rode Leo to fly over, took a chi from the waterspout, sat in his arms, and then flew into the sky. I'll take you to see this beautiful new world first, and at the same time we'll exchange our knowledge of crossing the teleportation array. A chi's body was petite under the mage's cloak, and her weight was also very light, which made Liszt easily think of the idiom weak and boneless. But who would have thought that this body contained such destructive magical power? The two rode a dragon together, circling around the Maelstrom Mountain, admiring the great mountains and rivers. At the same time, they were constantly exploring the connection between the magic net and the teleportation array. A chi's magic eyes did not see the void magic net wrapped around the wormhole space, but as a magic shooter, she could clearly feel the existence of the magic net. After Liszt's continuous narration, Her knowledge of the teleportation array was also constantly improving. Brother, if a chi has not calculated wrongly, I have roughly understood the principle of the formation of the teleportation array. In fact, the principle is essentially the same as the space ring in my hand. She raised her slender fingers, on which was the space ring that List had given her. I also found that the feeling between the two is similar, but I did not find the same essence. I feel that the gem space is an independent space, but the teleportation array is an existence that traverses the magic net. Because the gem space belongs to the magnification of a single node, it itself is integrated into the magic net, and is regarded as a part of itself by the magic net. The teleportation array, on the other hand, connects the two nodes together, tearing the stability of the magic net field, and is constantly oppressed by the magic net. List had a headache listening to the principles, and he was more concerned about the results. So to achieve the teleportation array, is it difficult to operate in practice? Very difficult. Really, how difficult is it? First of all, you have to find a relatively weak place in the magic net, so that it is convenient to tear the magic net and connect the nodes. Secondly, you have to have a strong enough magic array to maintain the node connection. Finally, you have to stabilize the node connection and open up a channel, which is even more difficult. As Achi spoke, she took a deep breath. Her chest, which was originally covered by the magic cloak, also straightened up. Although there are no traces of human activity, Achi still believes that this magic array is the work of the ancient magic shooters. At least they discovered and expanded the teleportation array into the present one. Is it the work of the ancient magic shooters? So, this island is very likely to have been visited by humans? Yes. The teleportation array, the ancient magic shooters, the shrinking of the magic net, invisible dragon, fire dragon, emerald dragon, soul fruit of the enchanting dragon, smoke dragon, the sky shipwreck of the sun's child, and the weapon or claw that cut off the emerald dragon's hind leg. List connected these seemingly jumbled clues together, and suddenly felt that the only reason for the combination of these powerful factors had appeared. War. Perhaps in ancient times, perhaps in the late Moon Empire, a great war had unfolded in the sky above the azure sea. The dragon roared and fell on the sea. The bright light of magic pierced the magic net to form the teleportation array, and the smoke dragon, who controlled the power of fate, could not escape death. Only a little seed of fate escaped, slowly waiting to germinate. Until one day, it grew up with a little boy, but did not expect to be carried forward in the hands of another transmigrator. Chapter 8:12. This chapter is My Horse Feeds the Sheep. With the accurate positioning of the sextant, Achi easily drew a simple topographic map of the Flame Archipelago on the notebook. The Flame Archipelago was not the kind of archipelago where the islands were very scattered and did not cover a large area of the sea. It looked like the fragmented oracle bone inscriptions preserved in museums. A complete tortoise shell was broken into many pieces and then pieced together. Of course, List preferred to call it a fragmented shell. The grade of the tortoise shell was too low, but the grade of the shell was immediately raised. This shell was also like an oval leaf, pointed at both ends and round in the middle, with a northeast-southwest orientation. There were 3 large islands in the northeast corner. According to Achi's description, each of them was close to the area of the Iron Hoof Island. In the middle was the huge Flame Island, and the Whirlpool Mountain was in the eastern center of the Flame Island. In the southwest corner, there were 4 large islands forming the edge of the shell, and together with the Flame Island, they formed an inland sea. Of course, this was only a rough map. Many areas were inferred by Achi and had not been carefully positioned. The area of the islands and the area of the sea had also not been calculated. To complete the smoke mission of mapping the map, it would take a long time to find the lost invisible dragon. In short, the archipelago was called the Flame Archipelago, and the surrounding sea could not continue to be called the Azure Waves Sea, so List simply gave it the name Shell Sea. All the offshore sea areas ruled by the future Flame Country were called Shell Sea. Brother, the Whirlpool Mountain is located in the depths of the inland of the Flame Island. Whether it is to the north, south, or east, it is more than 500 kilometers away. Qi was very good at mathematics. She had mastered the 4 operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division that Liszt taught her, as well as elementary knowledge such as square root. However, Liszt had completely forgotten the higher mathematical knowledge. He might not even be able to solve a quadratic equation, let alone functions such as cosine, sine, and power. However, he remembered a lot of formulas to find the area. A rectangle was length multiplied by width. A parallelogram was height multiplied by base. A triangle was height multiplied by base, and then reduced by half. A trapezoid area was height multiplied by upper and lower sides, and then reduced by half. And a circle area was pi multiplied by radius squared. Besides, there were also some abstract image areas that needed to be cut to make them approximate rectangles, triangles, and so on. Or he could draw grid lines, calculate the area that the image occupied on the grid, and then add them together. When he gave these formulas to Qi, she immediately carried them forward and developed them into an important tool for studying magic circles, astronomy, and geography. Therefore, it was easy for Qi to calculate the distance from the Whirlpool Mountain to the seaside, and concluded that each route would not be less than 500 kilometers. 500 kilometers is still acceptable. If Leo flies at full speed, he can reach the seaside in about 3 to 4 hours. Liszt calculated with his fingers and said. However, it was rare for Liszt to come to the Flame Archipelago, so he didn't plan to go back just like that. He wanted to map out the area of the Flame Archipelago first. Completing the smoke mission was more important. This matter was related to the whereabouts of his old friend, the invisible dragon. He always carried the smoke grass feast with him, waiting for the invisible dragon to attend the feast and eat the enchanting dragon soul fruit in passing. Leo landed on the ground and chewed the magic potion and auxiliary medicine that Liszt stuffed into his mouth, feeling contented. Liszt outlined his idea of building Inferno City to Qi. The city must be built, and the Great Maelstrom magic transmission formation must be developed. The current problem is that it is very dangerous to enter and exit the Great Maelstrom, and many fragile materials cannot be kept intact. We can set up a water curtain magic formation at the entrance of the Great Maelstrom and use the water curtain to slow down the ships passing through the Great Maelstrom. But even if the ships slow down, they will still fall down the mountain. Qi pondered seriously. I heard my brother tell me the story of opening a canal between 2 seas. The height of the sea is different, and water can be released and injected through different valves to realize navigation. The canal story she was talking about was actually the Panama Canal that Liszt had casually mentioned in his spare time. However, Liszt obviously remembered wrong. The sea surface of the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean were the same. However, the Panama Canal could not be excavated directly due to the geological influence. That was why the Panama Canal relied on the drop of the river to first raise and then lower, allowing ships to pass through smoothly. The Three Gorges Dam in China also used this type of sluice canal, and the earliest sluice canal in the world was the Spirit Canal in ancient China. Liszt, who still did not know that he was talking nonsense, nodded and said, "Yes, that canal uses sluices to release and inject water to complete the staircase navigation. So, you are saying that we should build this kind of canal in the Great Maelstrom Mountain? I'm afraid not. It is impossible to build a canal with a drop of 3,000 meters. But magic can. Qi can design a water column magic formation that can raise and lower the water column. Starting from the entrance of the Great Maelstrom Mountain, we can use about 30 water columns that have a vertical drop of 100 meters to complete navigation. Even so, I'm afraid the resources will be astronomical. When Qi has mastered the ice element, we can study the changes of the earth element. By then, we can use earth magic to completely transform the mountain and reduce the resource consumption. Qi said ambitiously. She had read the magic books that Kenli Truth brought from the Steel Ridge Kingdom, which recorded a few magic masterpieces from the era of the Moon Empire. It was said that there was a sky canal that went from the capital of the Moon Empire to the western border. It was supported by a magic formation. However, the sky canal had long been lost in the long river of history. Many magicians had tried to find the remains of the sky canal, but they had not found it yet. Therefore, Achi hoped to design a small inferior version of the Sky Canal for the Great Maelstrom Mountain. She was also a magic shooter. If the ancient magic shooters could do it, why couldn't the modern magic shooters? The magic books that she had read about the ancient Moon Empire were all wild and unconstrained, which made her feel very emotional. For a magician, there were only things that could not be imagined, and nothing that could not be done. Unfortunately, the golden age of the magic civilization was long gone. Liszt, however, was not so optimistic. With the decline of the magic net, it was difficult for the magic formation to absorb magic power from the net. It needed all kinds of precious magic materials to set it up. The resources needed were definitely astronomical. Now that he was struggling to raise 2 dragons, he wished that he could get several development orders a year. It was a little unrealistic to spend resources to build a canal. However, he was not in the mood to ignore Achi. Then wait for you to complete the Earth Elemental Incarnation switch as soon as possible. Then we can develop the magic portal of the Great Maelstrom. Now think of a way to use the Great Maelstrom to transport resources and develop this huge archipelago as soon as possible. Achi was not a person who was too ambitious. Brother, can we build many ships like the Flame, carefully reinforce them, accumulate resources and population, and then send them to the Great Maelstrom? Achi would cross first, use magic to catch the ship at the entrance of the Great Maelstrom, and then put it aside to unload? You mean to use the Flame as a disposable transportation tool? Yes. It's still a bit extravagant, but compared to transporting resources across the sea, it's really convenient, but it will often trouble you and me. It's good that you don't feel tired. Achi is looking forward to crossing the Great Maelstrom again and studying the magic transmission array. Maybe it won't be long before Achi can lay a new magic array herself and set up a transmission array from Black Horse Island to Flame Island. Chapter 8:13. Liszt did not participate in the construction of the Tinder Plains. He and Achi studied the vortex hole for an entire day, but there were no abnormalities here before the transmigration. Even when Achi released super magic to communicate with the magic net, there was no wormhole space that tore the magic net apart, even though the magic net appeared. Achi gave a relatively reasonable explanation. The magic net could not be deduced with common sense, and there was no such thing as physical distance. Liszt concluded, if the world he was in could be described as three-dimensional, then the magic net was an existence that surpassed three-dimensional. Just like how two-dimensional could not explain three-dimensional, three-dimensional could not explain the existence above three-dimensional. Therefore, the magic net that Achi communicated with and the magic net that the teleportation formation tore apart were only a part of the magic net and not the whole of the magic net. In short, it was such a mysterious logic. We have to pass through the vortex many times and figure out every detail of the teleportation formation bit by bit, Achi said. Then let's go and map the Flame Archipelago. After instructing Claus and the rest to continue the construction of the Tinder Plains, Liszt rode on the little fire dragon Leo and flew north with Achi in his arms. The Vortex Mountain was deep in the eastern part of Flame Island. Because the island was irregular, it was more than 500 kilometers away from the northern coast. They started flying in the afternoon, maintaining an altitude of more than 1,000 meters along the way while observing the terrain of Flame Island. From the flight path, Flame Island had undulating mountains and varied terrain. They also saw a few volcanoes emitting white smoke. However, Leo flew over excitedly, only to find that these volcanoes were dormant. There was no exposed magma for him to enter and absorb Volcano Supreme magic. Furthermore, Liszt also used the Dragon Eye path to observe the signs of magic below. He found that there were many lights of mana retroaction. There were World of Warcraft, potions, and even elves. However, he only remembered the locations of the lights and did not descend to collect them. Anyway, Flame Island was his territory, and everything was his. He could come and collect them whenever he wanted. Only the surrounding islands were land that he was prepared to give away. These large islands that were close to Iron Hoof Island were enough to confer a dozen marquises. Furthermore, Achi had only circled around the Flame Archipelago and had not searched further out. He did not know if there were any new islands. Even if he didn't, it didn't matter. The second archipelago, the one he had just named the Maelstrom Archipelago, could easily confer 2 or 3 more marquises to him. With the great Maelstrom's teleportation array, communication would be quite tight. In the evening, arriving at the coast, Leo returned to his body, and Achi began to act as the pilot. Riding on the shell and the waterspout, he was like a flickering light that streaked across the sea. This time, she swam along the coastline. Every time she swam a certain distance, she would take out the sextant to measure her position, record the specific location of each direction in the notebook, and finally connect these directions into a line. This line will outline the outline and area of Flame Island. Surveying and mapping was a little time-consuming, especially since the weather on Blazing Island seemed to be very changeable. It was still sunny here, but it was already raining there, so it was not good to use the sextant to calculate the position directly. He could only use other methods to ponder over it bit by bit, or wait for the weather to clear up before making the calculations. Luckily, they had sunk into the tedious task of mapping the map, and the magic platform communication was able to facilitate List's plans for the production and construction of his territory. Cross Buckthorn and the others were constantly building the Infernal Plains camp on Flame Island, while Kenley Truth and the others were constantly building the Whirlpool Town camp on Whirlpool Island. The expedition fleet led by Yevich had already set off with 2 other expedition fleets to the Flame Islands, ready to explore the surrounding waters with the Flame Islands as the center, reducing Achi's mapping work. On the Heart Island, the Knight was still hard at work mining. On the Iron Hoof City side, serfs were constantly purchased through the Marquis of Oxtail, and after training, they were sent to Black Horse Island. The officials of Black Horse Island, in accordance with List's instructions in the magic platform communication, continued to build large frame ships like the Flame, and prepared various materials which were sealed with thorny wood and rubber water. If it was not to prevent the materials from being crushed by the whirlpool, some broken ships could be used to transport them. Anyway, Achi would catch these large ships at the entrance of the whirlpool with a waterspout. The role of archmages in large projects was much stronger than that of the Dragon Knight, who could only charge and fight. Perhaps this was the reason why the Moon Empire was able to develop a brilliant civilization. Now, after the Knight ruled the world, it had become an ignorant, backward, half-slave and half-feudal system. Unfortunately, it was difficult for Achi to maintain so much workload by herself, and she could not take care of both sides. She could protect the exit of the whirlpool, but she could not stabilize the entrance of the whirlpool. The powerful strangulation force of the whirlpool was very strong. It was difficult for ordinary boxes and ships to resist, so they could only be constantly reinforced. After all, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, which lacked iron, built all wooden ships. A week passed in the blink of an eye. Achi finally completed all the maps of the islands around the Flame Islands. The results were gratifying, especially the area of the Flame Islands, which made it difficult for List to calm down for a long time. It was a huge amount of 3 million square kilometers, nearly 1/3 the area of China. The largest island on Earth was Greenland, with an area of 16 million square kilometers, and the Flame Island was 1/3 larger than it. In addition, there were 8 large islands with an area of more than 100,000 square kilometers, including 3 in the northeast corner of the archipelago and 4 in the Southwest Sea. The last one was discovered by the exploration team. About 1,000 kilometers away in the Southeast Sea of the archipelago, there were countless islands with an area of less than 100,000 square kilometers. During this week, Achi was busy mapping, and List was on the side, naming the islands. The big islands under the jurisdiction of the Flame Islands were. The map had been uploaded to White's public account, which could be found by searching for by Yuhan. After following, some writing materials would be released from time to time. The first big island, the Flame Island, was located in the center of the archipelago, with an area of 3 million square kilometers. The second big island, the Tulip Island, was located in the south of the archipelago, and was one of the 4 big islands in the southwest, with an area of 450,000 square kilometers. Liszt had decided to infect this island to the Tulip family, just like how the first Sapphire Grand Duke infected the Iron Hoof Island with an area of 300,000 square kilometers to the Bull family. The third big island, the Algae Island, was located in the northeast of the archipelago, and was one of the three big islands in the northeast, with an area of 280,000 square kilometers. The fourth big island, the Jingji Island, was located in the southwest of the archipelago, and was one of the four big islands in the southwest, with an area of 270,000 square kilometers. The fifth big island, the Mangrove Island, was located in the northeast of the archipelago, and was one of the three big islands in the northeast, with an area of 230,000 square kilometers. The sixth big island, the Jewel Island, was located in the west of the archipelago, and was one of the four big islands in the southwest, with an area of 220,000 square kilometers. The seventh big island, the Wudong Island, was located in the northeast of the archipelago, and was one of the three big islands in the northeast, with an area of 170,000 square kilometers. The eighth big island, the P Island, was located in the southwest of the archipelago, and was one of the four big islands in the southwest, with an area of 150,000 square kilometers. The ninth big island, the Anchor Island, was located in the depths of the southeast sea of the archipelago, and was connected by a string of small islands like an anchor thrown out by a big ship, hence the name, with an area of 100,000 square kilometers. The total area of the 9 big islands was 487 million square kilometers. Together with other large and small islands, the total area was more than 3 million square kilometers. If the Whirlpool Islands, the Midway Island, the First Island, the Dragon Turtle Island, the Three Islands, and other islands were included, the total area was more than 5 million square kilometers. The total area of all the islands in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire added up was only about 2 million square kilometers. With such an area, if there are a lot of mines on the island and a few more resource dragons are raised, it will be enough to be self-sufficient, and there will be no need to issue a development order every year like Sapphire. In fact, as long as I ride the invisible dragon, together with the light green gem dragon that has recovered, I will be able to be self-sufficient in a few years. Thinking of this, he summoned the smoke mission. Chapter 8:14. The invisible dragon was an old friend. It really got lost, otherwise it would have waited until the end of June to attend the banquet. The smoke grass Liszt prepared was almost dried into hay. But where did the invisible dragon get lost? This was a brain-racking question. After leaving the Flame Islands, Liszt used the magic eyes almost every day, trying to meet the invisible dragon on the way back to Black Horse Island. Unfortunately, he did not encounter the invisible dragon on the way back to Black Horse Island. He then ran to the dragon's table near Green Tea Town and lit the smoke grass. The stench made the nearby serfs nauseous, but the invisible dragon did not show up. It did not seem to be lost near Black Horse Island. Thus, Liszt hurried to the flower town and continued to light the smoke grass. There was no doubt that it was useless except for disgusting people. Where did the invisible dragon get lost? Liszt was puzzled and could only put aside this headless search for the time being and return to normal work. According to the consistent nature of smoke missions, most of the rewards did not need to be deliberately looked for. They would naturally be driven by the power of fate and come to him at his fingertips. Perhaps the invisible dragon was waiting on his way, waiting for Liszt to engrave an imprint on its mind. So, let's get busy with the construction of Inferno Town first. Liszt calmed his anxiety. Inferno Town was the next stage of the Inferno Plain Camp. This was the content of the new mission. Now that the distribution of the Flame Islands has been mapped, the next step is to start territorial relocation, systematically transfer the industry and population of the Flame territory, and carry out the large-scale development of the Flame Islands. Please build the Inferno Plain Camp into Inferno Town. Reward: new schooner. The seat reward for the new schooner was probably perfunctory, because the earliest shipyard of Black Horse Island had been studying the longitudinal sail technology provided by Liszt. He proposed the idea, but the specific production and operation needed to be realized little by the shipwrights. After more than a year of development, the research was about to be successful. Your Highness, all the frame ships are ready. The goods are loaded into the cabin after being heavily reinforced. Safety ropes woven from hemp ropes have been produced in large quantities, enough to ensure that the migrating serfs and craftsmen are firmly tied to the cabin and will not be thrown out. Isaiah came to report. Go and check the frame ship again. I don't want anything to go wrong. Any small mistake could lead to the destruction of the ship and the loss of lives. As you wish, Your Highness. Isaiah bowed and excused himself. Then he went to check again. This time, a total of 10 large frame ships were arranged to cross the whirlpool. It was the masterpiece of tens of thousands of shipbuilders working day and night on Black Horse Island. 5 of the large frame ships were filled with all kinds of materials, including daily necessities and construction materials. Just rubber alone took up half of the ship. It had to be said that ever since the rubber worm triplets evolved into 3 rubber fairies, Big White, Little White, and Little White, they were able to use the power of the 3 elements to repair the rubber tree under List's guidance. Therefore, the production of rubber in the territory skyrocketed, and there was a lot of inventory. This time, they were all taken away by List. He was going to build up the infernal plains. Apart from resources, there was also population. Farming serfs were indispensable. They couldn't rely on hunting and fishing all day. It was too extravagant to rely on the great maelstrom to transport food. The construction of Infernal Town was inseparable from craftsmen, so a large number of carpenters, stonemasons, and architects, led by Jemiah Rammed Earth, were needed. Knight were also essential personnel to protect the safety of the Infernal Plains area at all times. At present, there was only one holy swordsman, Cross Buckthorn, who had not yet been titled, in the camp. Once he explored the surrounding environment, the camp could only rely on the protection of a dozen Earth Knights. Philip, go and call Count Duarte. Yes, Your Highness. Philip will rode away from the Castle of Thorns at once. He had followed List for so many years, but he was still a retainer knight on paper because his strength stayed at the trainee knight level. List's first batch of selected retainer knights were basically the descendants of Flower Town's local serfs. They had mediocre qualifications. If they wanted to be promoted to an Earth Knight, they needed to continue to endure. However, there were exceptions. Xavier Cowdung, who was in the same batch as Philip, was not necessarily better than Philip, but because of his good flattery, he had been promoted to Black Horse Island's diplomatic assistant, working under Zambrata. And with the infusion of resources from List, he was promoted to an Earth Knight. His secret work was to cooperate with the blood servants to spy on intelligence and master the rats to mix into various forces. He was another eye for List. Soon Duarte Red Apricot arrived. Your Highness, what can I do for you? I want to develop the Flame Islands and need to send a team of orders of chivalry to ensure the safety of the construction workers. It just so happens that you have nothing to do, so I decided to give this task to you. List said. Duarte's eyes lit up and he said excitedly, I am willing to share the burden of Your Highness. Very well, but I won't give you elite knights. You can go to Iron Hoof City and recruit those inferior knights yourself. However, you have to keep it a secret. For the time being, you can't tell anyone about the Flame Islands. Since Flame Island was so big, it was easy to imagine how dangerous it was in the desolate forest. Elite knight should not die in the forest, so it was better to recruit those unqualified knight to die. If they were lucky enough to survive until the founding of the country, they would be given wealth and glory. Understood. I will give you a month. Commander Garcia, who is stationed in Iron Hoof City, will cooperate with you. The Knight of the Tulip family will also cooperate with you. Yes. After Duarte left in a hurry, List asked Philip to call someone again. Call Emily. Emily was still an elite Earth Knight. She killed many knight in the Battle of the Sea, but she was not promoted to a Sky Knight. Compared to List, who was promoted from an Earth Knight to a Sky Knight in half a year, Emily's superhuman talent was obviously inferior. Your Highness, the girl walked into the castle. How is your training? There is no war, so the progress is slow. Emily told the truth. In that case, I will arrange for you to go to the Flame Island. There are a lot of World of Warcraft lurking in the forest there. List said, bring Dosen and the Blizzard team to help Firetown make rocks. Dosen does not need to be responsible for producing rocks. Let it protect you. Your Highness, Emily can protect herself. List looked at the tall girl with a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth. Protects you, and you have to protect it too. Dosen is my earliest close combat partner, and I don't want anything to happen to it. Emily, I will leave Dosen to you. You should be able to understand my expectations of you. Emily's face flashed a little red, and then she said sternly, please rest assured, Your Highness, Emily will never let Your Highness down. Very well, go take the Blizzard team to adapt to the cabin of the frameship, and make sure that they are disciplined during the voyage. List watched the girl's back as she left and slowly closed his eyes. Chapter 8:15. There was another Orders of Chivalry that followed the fleet to Flame Island. It was the Orders of Chivalry from Black Horse Island led by Fox. The task of this Orders of Chivalry was not to explore the forest, but to protect the Infernal Plains and the mages stationed in the Infernal Plains. The Guild of Magic was preparing to open a branch of the Guild of Magic in the Infernal Plains. In the future, mages would move to the Infernal Plains and follow the Orders of Chivalry to explore the broad forest. List had gradually transformed these mages into experts and scholars, letting them fight for scientific research for a lifetime. As for the mages going to the Infernal Plains, they were selected for mages with questionable loyalty. With the isolation of Flame Island, once these mages arrived at the Infernal Plains, they would be isolated from the world. Even if they were part-time rats in other countries, they would still have to work for List. A few years later, the road between Flame Island and the outside world would be opened, and they would probably be labeled as the Nation of Fire. June 22nd. The weather was fine on Black Horse Island. The blazing flame took the vanguard, followed by 10 large frame ships as they set out in a majestic manner. List stood at the bow of the ship and looked at Achi, who was sitting upright and not burying her head in her book. He asked with concern, Achi, can you hold on controlling 11 ships? Achi nodded. It's a little difficult, but if we reduce the speed to 300 kilometers per hour, we can save some effort. The sailing distance from Black Horse Island to the Maelstrom was 4,200 kilometers. At a speed of 300 kilometers per hour, it would take 14 hours, plus the rest time halfway, to arrive in one day. Then slow down, don't tire yourself out. So the fleet moved towards the Maelstrom at a speed of 300 kilometers per hour. On the way, they stopped at the Red Tree Town Camp on one of the 3 islands, the Crescent Island Crescent Town Camp on the first island, and the Green Light Town Camp on the Midway Island. One was to let the knight and civilians go ashore to relieve seasickness and other conditions. The second was to send food, jade, and potions to the light green gem dragon. The light green gem dragon Issen lived a happy life on the Midway Island. There were many World of Warcraft on the island, and it could hunt at will. List would send it the jade and potion resources it lacked. His body had almost recovered. Later on, List would mount it himself and fly toward the Great Maelstrom. There, he would pass through the teleportation array and enter Flame Island. When the time came, he would find a suitable place to build a dragon nest and let the light green gemstone dragon slowly produce light green gemstones. The market for gemstones was always in short supply, so there was no need to worry about not being able to sell. All kinds of magical equipment and divine weapons required gems as raw materials. This was why the price of gems was so high. After a friendly chat with Ethan, List returned to the fleet. He set off immediately and arrived at the Swirling Islands in an hour and a half. He then docked at Whirlpool Town on the Whirlpool Island. Vortex Town was still in its infancy, and the magic lab was very simple. List held a group meeting here, and the main content of the meeting was the material acceptance plan for the next day. After Achi passed through the Great Maelstrom, the 10 frame ships had to undergo manual navigation and slowly sail into the Great Maelstrom. The timing had to be precise so that Achi could be prepared in time to catch the ship with the waterspout and prevent the ship from rushing out of the whirlpool and crashing. After everything was settled, the next morning the fleet set off again and docked near the Great Maelstrom. Before transmigrating, Achi had to conduct a new experiment, the rope experiment. This experiment was to find out whether the wormhole space connected to the Great Maelstrom existed in reality or not, and how the distance of the wormhole space connected to an area thousands of kilometers away. Leo was holding on to a rope as thick as a wrist made of hemp vines. A huge rock was tied to one end to accelerate the fall of the rope. List and Achi rode the dragon together and slowly flew above the Great Maelstrom. Right above the whirlpool well, he suddenly threw the big rock tied to the rope into the well. The rock fell rapidly, and the rope was pulled round and round. When the rock fell into the depths of the watery whirlpool, a ball of light quickly swallowed the rock in the vision of the dragon's eye. Then, a huge pulling force came from the rope that Leo was pulling. Leo's body was directly pulled down and spun, and one end of the rope was difficult to hold, so it was quickly pulled and thrown into the deep whirlpool well. Everything happened in a flash, and it was almost impossible to see with the naked eye. "Steady yourself, Leo." List and Leo's hearts were one, and they frantically flapped their wings. Only then did they manage to stabilize their body at the entrance of the whirlpool well and fly up again. "Big brother," Achi called out nervously. "It's fine, the strength of the rope is beyond imagination." "Leo's strength is also not enough to hold on to the rope," List said with some relief. The thick rope made of hemp vines was a super cable that even Leo couldn't pull. Luckily, it wasn't directly tied to Leo's leg, or else he would definitely be pulled into the Great Maelstrom. "Is it caused by the repulsive force in the wormhole space?" "I don't know." List shook his head. He really didn't know where this force came from. Achi thoughtfully took out the Devil platform and waited for a moment. Then, she contacted the Devil platform in the infernal planes. There was a quick response. The big rock used for the experiment had already fallen, and behind it was a 100-meter-long cable. Achi analyzed. There are two possibilities. One is that the wormhole space is a real existence, and its internal repulsive force caused a force that even Leo couldn't hold on to. The other is that the wormhole space is a non-real existence, or it could be said that the space was compressed, causing the cable to move quickly, causing Leo to be unable to hold on. List looked into the distance and nodded. "Makes sense. Big brother, let's transmigrate too." Achi can't wait to verify her idea and observe the details of the magic teleportation array again. "Okay." With a thought, Leo immediately folded his wings and fell into the deep whirlpool well like a meteor. Rumble. He was already in the wormhole space. In the vision of the Dragon Eye orbit, the densely packed spider web-like magic power lines outlined the zigzagging space tunnel. Around the tunnel, the magic net was faintly discernible. Once again, he transmigrated. This should be the masterpiece of the ancient magic shooters. List was still deeply shocked. The endless magic net wrapping and the drilling of the magic net were a strong visual impact. But unlike the first time, this time Achi transmigrated with him. Her eye of magic level couldn't compare to the Dragon Eye orbit, so she had to ask List for many details. You're tuning in to the Legend of the Vagabond YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.